Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Marvel, I am the leader of the mutant race. Chapter 61. Boss, here we are. On the deck covered with hoarfrost, a woman in a mink coat jumped to the bow of the ship. She looked at the endless white land not far away, her eyes flashed with excitement and some anxiety. After so many years, no one knows how many of the compatriots who fought side by side back then can still wake up from under the ice. Yuri turned around and saw that all 5 shacks had come out of the cabin. The 5 people silently lined up in a row behind Yuri. Everyone's eyes were staring unblinkingly at the area that had sealed them. The permafrost of most of our compatriots. He did not take Ethan with him on this trip to the North Pole. Firstly, the business in New York needs someone to watch over him. Secondly, Ethan is not suitable to survive in such an extreme environment. He is considerate of his employees and caring for his subordinates. He has always been serious. Although he did not bring Ethan with him, he brought another human being with him. After some enlightenment, the old and strong comrade Rogers volunteered to help Yuri find himself, who is still sleeping in the ice. After all, he only had 1 whole day to spare. And Yuri can spend all his old age. Whoa! The speed of the icebreaker slowly decreased, and finally it got stuck firmly in the ice not far from the land. The ordinary people who drove the ship were all mentally controlled by Yuri. After paying the corresponding reward, the other party would you anchored here and brought a large amount of supplies to everyone. After looking at each other with Yuri, Tiger turned back to the cabin and carried old Rogers, who was deliberately uncooperative, like a chicken in front of Yuri. Why are you doing this to me? I just haven't slept yet, ugh. Yuri was not in the mood to listen to this cunning guy's excuses, so he kneeled down, all his unsaid words in his stomach. Tiger let go of his big hand holding his back collar, and let old Rogers fall to the ground in pain. Struggling while holding her belly. Stop playing tricks on me, old man. Yuri squatted in front of old Rogers, who was wearing a mask of pain, gently patted his old face that was twitching from pain and threatened, the things in your head may be useful, but they are not necessary for me. Don't force me to find and kill you from 70 years ago now. The reason why he brought old Rogers with him was because of the memory of the future in his mind. After all, in the memory of the Traverser, the supreme mage Guyi he had to face next was too powerful. When the other party discovers that he is a prophet of the future, he can also use today's old Rogers as an excuse to excuse the past. As long as he kills people and silences them, the truth will only be that there is no proof. After the icebreaker disappeared from sight, the 5 shacks decisively summoned the symbiote reproductive suit. Yuri threw old Rogers to Tiger and let him wrap it up with his tail, while he himself sat on Vanax's neck. Let the other party happily carry you into the blue sky. In this inaccessible place, everyone finally no longer had to restrain their strength. Groups of black shadows shuttled across the snowfield like lightning, with snow waves tens of meters high falling behind them. Old Rogers, who was tied up by Tiger's tail, only felt he was stuffed into the washing machine drum that was ventilated from all sides. Not long after his steely wool lasted, he voluntarily chose to give up resistance and fell into a coma. It is now around December of 2010. The deeper you go into the Arctic Circle, the less time you have to see the sun. Yuri and his party have been traveling for 2 full days, and until now they have not seen a trace of the sun at all. Under Yuri's instructions, Vanax hovered in the air for several times before landing on the ground. This place was very close to the center of the Arctic Circle. The outside temperature was already below -degrees. Old Rogers had been taken into the black ball space. Even superhumans injected with serum are not suitable to survive in such a harsh environment. The 4 shacks quickly arrived in front of Yuri. People flying in the sky are generally faster than running on the ground. There is no way around it. Yuri jumped off Vanax's neck. He released his life energy. He closed his eyes and tried to sense it, but was blocked by an inexplicable wave. He knew that this was Phastos's attempt to prevent him from being sealed. The mutant race was discovered and set up an isolation formation. Although his technological level had made a qualitative leap not long ago, it was still not enough to confront this senior who had practiced both science and magic for tens of thousands of years. Helpless, he had no choice but to use the stupidest method, digging 3 feet into the ground and carpet search. If nothing else happens, there are our compatriots here. Let's set up camp here. We will always encounter some difficulties the first time. Isn't it? The perennial frozen soil is extremely hard. Even for mutants equipped with symbiotic reproductive equipment, it is not easy to dig and mine on it. Everyone walked around and selected a naturally formed underground ice cave as a temporary camp. Resettlement site. After building the residence, Yuri sensed the faint breath of life of his compatriots more carefully, and after circled a few general ranges for Shaq and the five, he began to understand and develop what he had recently acquired by himself. The first is the dragon inheritance, which is different from the memory of the traveler. The keel under the shop is not the remains left by the Kunlun beast Shulao when he passed away. Just an incarnation that took the initiative to stay. He divides his inheritance into two parts. One part is about the practice of qi, which is preserved by the flesh and blood Shaolao and taught to the enlightened creatures living in Kunlun, and uses their power to guard that small world. One part is about the practice of patterns, which is inscribed on the bones by the dragon god and is personally kept and sealed, waiting for the destined person to pass it on. There is nothing much to say about the inheritance of qi. The more powerful one is like Fahei, who punches a mighty dragon and palms a powerful magic spell. The rubbish one is like the contemporary Iron Fist Danny. He can only hold it for a long time if he is not acclimatized. Let qi cover the entire fist. The inheritance limit of patterns is much higher than that of qi, but it is also much more difficult to get started than qi. To put it simply, it is to use energy to condense into special patterns to induce external energy to achieve attack, defense, and other purposes. If qi and wen are compared to two games, then Shulao's inheritance is actually to distribute the operation rights of the game characters. All inheritors can play freely in the programs it formulates, but never it is possible to really master this game, and Yuri's inheritance is the code of the entire game, which he can modify at will, because he is the one who made the program. Although the authority is very large, Yuri feels that he may not be able to use it at all in his lifetime. It is not that he has no ambition, but the previous authority holder, Dragon God, has left too many legacies. Countless patterns are waiting for him in the seed and soul space. These patterns are similar to the patterns that appear on the Eternals' bodies when they activate their superpowers, but the former is more streamlined, more efficient, and more stable than the latter. It's also safer, but at the same time, it's also harder to master. On the basis of having the super runes of the Eternals, it took Yuri so many days to master the 3 runes of healing, repair and storage, but this also aroused his fighting spirit. You must master all the patterns left by Shenlong in your lifetime. Pursue reading. Chapter 62. From now on, call me leader. In the core of the Arctic Circle during the polar night, it is almost impossible to feel the passage of time. The lives of the 5 shacks are extremely monotonous. They either smash ice cubes, dig icebergs or eat and rest every day, but no one complains about this. Kate and Vanax are doing this for their compatriots who are sealed under the ice. Shaq, Chat and Tiger are here for a happy sexual life in the future. During this period, Yuri tried to pass on the pattern practice method to them, but without exception, the 5 of them had no talent in this area. After Yuri insisted on engraving the pattern on their bodies, these guys the ability can be used like an arm and a finger to bring out the abilities contained in it. Yuri walked out of the ice cave and floated into the air with his hands behind his back. The energy gained from absorbing the dragon bone not only strengthened his soul and body, but also gave him the ability to fly unknowingly. The feeling of floating in the sky was different from that on the ground. When standing, the latter puts all the weight of the body on the soles of the feet, while the former puts the force on the entire body evenly. He flew to the excavation site of the 5 shacks. The palm of Vanax, who had been busy for a long time, was flashing with golden light. She patted the rune on her palm with her backhand on her head, and a gentle golden light flashed. However, both physical and mental fatigue disappeared in an instant. You will be good players, but you will never become game developers. Looking at the skilled looks of several people, it was obvious that they had done this many times. Yuri sighed softly. Guys without any imagination and creativity, how can I rest assured that the important task of reviving the ethnic group has been handed over to you? It's in your hands. Boss. When the 5 people noticed Yuri above their heads, they all stopped what they were doing. They stared at Yuri floating in the sky with bright eyes. Everyone except Vanax hoped that he could master the secret of flying soon. And then use the transfer tube to copy and paste this ability onto himself. Isn't it just a little painful? Anyway, as long as I don't let myself realize it, it's worth it to fly. Yuri landed on the bumpy frozen soil. Spread out his hands and poured the energy in his body into the ground at his feet without reservation. He had repeated this operation many times before, but every time he could not really touch it. Compatriots under the seal, awaken them. But this time is different. He has mastered a new pattern, Detonation. The golden energy is combined with every inch of soil. Starting from Yuri, the frozen soil with a radius of 300 meters will be smeared with a layer of gold. The 5 shacks looked at each other, and they were keenly aware of the huge danger under their feet. Brewing in a piece of land, the energy continued to penetrate deep into the ground, and finally came into contact with the solid seal under the permafrost before the energy in Yuri's body was exhausted. Yuri controlled the output of energy with one hand, and the other hand slowly outlined and painted complex stripes in the void. As the syllables of unknown meaning in his mouth rippled, these stripes of nothingness gradually emerged. As the last syllable was uttered, the entire stripe suddenly glowed with golden light. It was thrown into the 300-meter golden frozen soil by Yuri as if it were an entity, and then violent tremors came from the ground beneath his feet. Back! Back as far as you can! Yuri's face turned pale. In order to see the seal once and for all, he was really about to squeeze it dry. Vanax turned into a giant bird and picked him up in one bite and threw him to his neck. Then he flapped his wings and took him with him. Yuri chased after Shaq and others who had already ran 800 meters away. Boss, look how fast they run each one. I am the only one who remembers to take you with me. Vanax obviously didn't chase with all her strength. She condensed her recovery dragon pattern and hit Yuri. Seeing that the latter's aura gradually stabilized, she took the credit and said, "It's just the two of us mating tonight, okay? Don't have any negative feelings. Silly cat." Bang! Before Yuri could say anything, he was crushed in his stomach by the hundreds of meters of frozen soil that exploded behind him and the unparalleled shock wave. The aftermath of the explosion tore apart the bones like bones. Nearly 1,000 meters of Arctic land. The moment before he was affected, Vanax turned over and used the 2 large wings transformed from the symbiote reproductive suit to protect Yuri, who had not fully recovered. Then, he and the 4 shacks who were running desperately on the ground were killed behind him. The airwaves flew far away. I don't know how many icebergs were smashed. Yuri, who was protected by Vanax, not only did not suffer any harm, but he felt the softness of the silly bird carefully in the shocks. I don't know how far she was blown away, but Vanax finally stabilized her figure in the gradually weakening air waves. She retained the 2 wings behind her and returned to human form. She hugged Yuri, who was still a little pale, and staggered. The ground fell to the ground. Cough cough cough. Yuri looked at the stupid bird who was holding Bing Shan and coughing up blood immediately after letting go of him. While injecting the healing and recovery dragon patterns he had just sketched into her body, he took the opportunity to rub Vanax with pity. "Seize little head." Shaq, Chat and Tiger obeyed his words and were brave enough to die out of loyalty to their leader. Kate's obedience to him was a sign of surrender to the strong, and the one in front of him looked stupid. In fact, the stupid bird, who is not very smart, really cares about him. "Boss, I'm fine." Vanax rubbed the warm hand on top of her head affectionately, lowered her head and wiped away the blood from the corner of her mouth without leaving a trace. The 2 dragon marks were gone, and the injured body had recovered to some extent. She held you in her arms. With his arms in his hand, he looked around and soon saw the 4 shacks rushing towards this direction. "Congratulations to the boss for improving your strength again. The 4 shacks all have wounds that are recovering rapidly, but everyone, including Yuri, cares about these. The large cracks that appeared out of thin air in the distance are still expanding outwards, and countless people are covered in ice and snow. The icebergs were swallowed by the mouth of the earth. It's a bit too much to play." Seeing this large crack stretching for several kilometers, Yuri couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. After he learned how to detonate, he thought about using it to blow up the frozen soil on the seal to get closer. Observing the seal from a distance and finding a way to crack it, he really didn't expect such a big hole to be blown out. The matter has come to this point, it is useless to say more. Yuri found a flat place to sit down, slowly recovering his energy while waiting for all the soil above the seal to fall. Kate glanced at the stupid bird who was leaning close to Yuri but had not been driven away. A trace of envy and annoyance flashed in her eyes. In her impression, Yuri was always powerful and invincible, but she forgot how powerful he was. There will also be a day when the mage loses blue. "It's over, I'm afraid I have to sleep alone tonight." The dragon pattern is indeed powerful. In the past, even the energy gathering array would take half a day to restore energy. However, under the Restore Dragon Mark hand, it was fully restored within a few minutes. Yuri stood up from the ground and sat astride Vanax naturally. Si consciously drooped his neck. All the soil on the big crack in the distance has settled on the ground. Shaq and others who have been silently guarding him have also turned into mutant prototypes. He looked into the eyes of the four monsters and suddenly smiled and said, "From now on, call me leader." Chapter 63 Mutant Race, Breaking the Seal. The mutant race is a race with a certain social structure. Leader is not a title that can be called casually. When they first broke out of the ice in Alaska, the 5 Shaqs called him Master. This was because they were the leader's soldiers, so they were killed by the Eternals together with Yuri, who was not yet enlightened. Seal, after taking them into the handicraft shop, Yuri asked them to call themselves boss because he wanted everyone to quickly integrate into human society and learn human language and habits. But now, he has abilities that are countless times more powerful than before, has insights that are decades beyond reality or even jumps directly out of reality, and has unimaginable ambition and courage. With his help, his compatriots are about to break out of the ice and see the light of day again. The power will become stronger as time goes by. The leader of this group must be him. Leader. 5 uniform voices were sonorous and powerful. And an invisible aura burst out from Yuri. After so many years, someone finally called me leader again. Blue times. The 4 of Shaq were running on the ground, and Vanax was flying in the sky holding Yuri. The 6 of them reached the seal that had become the Great Rift Valley almost at the same time, and plunged in without saying a word. Bang! 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 5 landing sounds sounded in no particular order, and the wind and waves blew away the soft soil underfoot, revealing the seal body covered by it. Tap, tap. Yuri got off Vanax's neck, rubbed the dirt away with his feet, and then casually tore off a metal bar that was destroyed by the blast wave. The secret runes engraved on it were layered one after another. After learning how to make the Arc Reactor Mark series armor, making superpowers only instilled in him all the scientific knowledge of the same level, so he didn't know many of these magic side runes. He could vaguely distinguish them. They should all be used to defend against external attacks. Throwing away the scrap seal parts, he pressed his hands on the ground, and the energy that had just returned to his body poured out again without reservation. He wanted to feel how useful this seal was. 1, 2, 3. In order to make the mutant race completely disappear from human society, Fastos, this bitch, used 9 layers of seals to suppress his compatriots. 6 of them were specially designed for the outside world. They had all been destroyed by the explosion just now, and the remaining 3 layers were destroyed by the explosion just now. Layers to the inside, there is only 1 layer left that can still function. You must know that the explosion just now directly created a big rift valley. If it were Yuri who had just emerged from the ice in Alaska, he probably wouldn't be able to shake this layer of the seal in his lifetime. Dismantle. With an order, the 5 Shaqs immediately transformed into walking house-destroying machines. Countless tentacles transformed from symbiote reproductive suits moved in and out of the broken seals, and quickly tore down the 8-layer seal that had been scrapped. Yuri chanted obscure spells and combined with the storage dragon pattern to collect all the seal fragments into a void space with unknown coordinates. There was no gravity and no sound in it. Only a majestic keel served as a light source. The sealed fragments that were taken in were placed there, floating quietly in a corner of the space, waiting for Yuri to have time to study it carefully. Through the last layer of seals, one could clearly see the dozens of mutants suppressed beneath it. The explosion just now was too loud, and a few of the more sensitive ones had gradually regained consciousness and woke up from their dormancy. The 6 Yuri people can see them, and they can naturally see Yuri and his party. With the iconic appearance of the 5 Shaq people, they can easily recognize that these are the 5 personal guards of the leader. Look again. Looking at the human being surrounded by the 5 Shaq people like stars and the moon, the eyes of this group of awakened mutants couldn't help showing excitement. Ho ho! Yuri's face suddenly darkened. This group of blind fools, instead of bowing their heads after seeing him, they regarded him as food kidnapped by the 5 Shaqs. Roar! Seeing Food taller and revealing his true form and speaking the language unique to the mutant race, several mutant beasts under the seal blinked, their big ferocious faces full of confusion. Force, Roar! Roar! Shaq stepped hard on the seal on the head of the mutated beast. Looking at the panicked compatriots below, he finally understood what he looked like in the eyes of the leader when he first entered human society. What a fool he is. While Yuri ordered the mutant beasts below to wake up all the compatriots who still had the breath of life, he sat down and carefully explored the last layer of seals in order to find weak points and break them. although the main function was to prevent the mutant beasts from escaping internally. Yes, but after all, it is the joint creation of Fastos and Tama. If he doesn't do this, he will really be unable to crack it with brute force for a while. The fellow mutants under the seal were rudely awakened one after another. After a brief commotion, they gathered in a group and stared longingly at the motionless leader sitting outside the seal. I don't know how long it has been sleeping. The leader and his bodyguards have evolved a lot. The leader must have suffered a lot at the hands of the Eternals over the years. Look at him, he has lost weight. I don't know where the leader will eat meat after he rescues us this time. After sleeping for so many years, I have almost forgotten what human flesh tastes like. Do you like to eat human flesh? I think beef tastes better, right? Heretics. Our mutants don't eat human flesh and beef. The compatriots who have died under the hands of the eternal race for so many years have died in vain. Bang! Click, click. In the southwest corner of the last layer of the formation, after a slight explosion, the sound of gears rubbing and the formation breaking was heard one after another. Yuri floated into the air. Under the surprised gazes of the mutant beasts, the palm of his right hand condensate an energy bomb the size of a fist. Isn't this the ability of the Eternals? How come the leader is so skilled? Shaq, you hit the southeast corner. Chat, you hit the southwest corner. Tiger. Under the surprised gazes of the mutated beasts under the seal, the 5 Shaqs also took out a fist-sized energy bomb. Then Yuri gave an order, and 6 energy bombs came out of their hands and smashed them almost at the same time. On the last layer of seals that flickered frequently. Crack, crack. The shimmering golden light of the seal gradually dimmed, and each of the precise runes and gears lost their original function. The 5 Shaqs felt the looseness under their feet, and they all transformed the symbiotic reproductive attire on their bodies into tentacles, tightly adhering themselves to the on the rock wall of the Great Rift Valley. The mutated beasts under the seal began to restless. They stared at the solid seal above them that had suppressed them for hundreds of years. Now it finally cracked. Just waiting for the leader's order, they would break out in an instant and come back. World! Roar, roar! The low roar of the beast was mixed with uncontrollable excitement and excitement. Yuri raised his head and glanced at the sky above his head. It was clear and cloudless. The only pity was that there was no sun to be seen, but none of that mattered anymore, because it was right here. Moment. Mutants, break the seal. Roar. Chapter 64 Becoming Like Me. In the center of the Arctic, there is a new scar on the earth. Dozens of skinny blue-black monsters climbed up the vertical rock wall. They were scrambling and excited, like evil ghosts who had just escaped from hell. Their muscles were shriveled and their fur was dull, but his eyes are still fierce and his claws are still sharp. They jumped out of the rift, roared at the sky above their heads, roared at the ground beneath their feet, and announced to everything they could see the return of the planet's top predator. Yuri was suspended in midair, watching them vent their emotions with a smile. He took out the various foods prepared in advance from the black ball and piled them on the ground. The rich fragrance and rising heat instantly attracted the attention of all the mutant beasts. They gathered together in unison, facing Yuri in midair and letting out low beast roars, as if they were performing some ritual. After a while, all the mutant beasts stopped making sounds, whether they were 4-legged, 3-legged, or 2-legged. Those with legs and those without legs all prostrated themselves on the ground and offered their loyalty to the leader. Roar. Starting from today, the mutant race returns to the world. Roar. The first thing after filling your stomach is to learn human language. Ho. We will be in the North Pole for a while and will not leave until all compatriots break the seal. Ho. My personal guards will temporarily serve as teachers. If you have any questions, just ask them. Ho. No more words, let's start dinner. The 3 of Shaq could not restrain their excitement for a long time. After Yuri ordered to start eating, they revealed their powerful and domineering true bodies, looking for their favorite target among the skinny female mutant beasts, while Vinax and Kate followed Yuri straight back to the ice cave where they camped. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Now that he has successfully rescued a compatriot in the seal, Yuri can finally relax for a while and kick aside the silly cats and birds that are rubbing against him. He will be locked up for several days. Old Rogers was released from the black ball. What color? Wouldn't it be nice to bully the double-standard old man if you have the time? Old Rogers rolled around on the ground twice. The first thing he did after he woke up was to shudder violently. Although there was no biting cold wind from the outside world in the ice cave, the temperature was still below -degrees. This temperature, although it won't cause frostbite to death for a super soldier, it's still not a very comfortable environment. You'll never know anything from me. Old Rogers struggled to get up from the ground. He saw the surrounding environment clearly and knew that he had no possibility of escape, so he simply gave up this idea, put on a fighting posture, stared fiercely at the expressionless Yuri and said, "Yuri, since you know magic, you must have heard of the name Guyi. Give up your plan to find out my memory, and you don't want to be approached by that powerful supreme mage, do you?" Yuri chuckled, dismissing the threat. After he traveled thousands of miles to kill the Eternal's member druid in the Amazon rainforest, he understood a truth: the future in Old Roger's memory, the memory of the time traveler, and the future seen by Ancient One through the Time Stone are all. It is an established fact that as the supreme mage who has been in charge of Kamatage for hundreds of years, Guyi has seen too many futures that have suddenly changed due to certain people. She will only seek new ways out in the changed future and will not kill them. Unusual factors leading to future changes. As long as the Earth dimension is not threatened, Ancient One will never show up easily. Xiaochang was speechless. Yuri waved his hand. Vanax and Kate understood, and rushed forward and directly pushed Old Rogers to the ground. "Fuck! Yuri! Aren't you really afraid that what you do will ruin everything in the future?" Old Roger's face was tightly attached to the ice, but he still struggled to raise his head, trying to convince Yuri, who kept walking towards him, "Your relatives, friends, including yourself, may all be in the near future. In the future, only I will be wiped out. Only by stopping your damn curiosity now can you seize the glimmer of hope in the infinitely dangerous future. I believe in myself more than you." Yuri walked up to Old Rogers and kicked his head into the ice. He controlled the energy in his body and his spiritual energy to penetrate into Old Rogers' brain, and then slowly climbed up his seemingly indestructible steel. Will. Detonate has endless uses. Its working principle is to first let the user's energy penetrate into the target that needs to be detonated, and then use the same energy to outline the detonate dragon pattern. The two merge into one, just like a fuse being blown by a fire source. It was ignited, and in an instant, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. "I have never heard your name in the future, Yuri, which means you died before I was thawed out of the ice. Let me go. I can save." Boom! Silent roars exploded on Old Roger's iron will. The wall of wool that once seemed indestructible despite Yuri's collision was like a broken ice layer, with shocking cracks that quickly moved toward him like lightning in the clouds. "Spread around! Damn bastard! What did you do to me?" Yuri ignored the dizzy but still yelling Old Rogers. He repeated his old tricks and once again completed a fixed point blast at the weakest point of the wall of will. Boom! No! After sensing the contact between Yuri's spiritual will and his own memory, Old Rogers exploded with anger and used his neck to push up the foot that was on his head. His sight was filled with debris and blood. The ice began to move up inch by inch, but before he could see Yuri's knee, Yuri, who once again increased the strength of his foot, stepped back to where he should be. Yuri stared blankly at the empty dark ice cave, his consciousness quickly browsing all the memories in his soul and the incompetent rage of Old Rogers, Hulk, Thor, Hawkeye, Iron Man, Winter Soldier, Vision, Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, Thanos. Scenes that have not happened yet but have been handled by Rogers are disillusioned in front of Yuri's eyes like a movie. Rogers' soul rushes towards Yuri's consciousness again and again, but is surrounded every time. The dense golden energy around him was blocked from making any progress. Time passed, and Old Rogers' memories were finally read. Yuri waved his hand and knocked away the stubborn soul in the soul space, and asked in an inexplicable tone, "I'm already in, so what's the use of resisting? Get out! Get out! Get out!" Old Rogers hit the shield next to Yuri's consciousness again. The soul body was blurred to the point where it was impossible to see its original appearance. Yuri sighed softly, and the soul collapsed, ranging from amnesia to dementia. "Seeing that it was all ready for the sake of accomplishing your goal, I will show mercy and help you." Without the hindrance of iron will, surging spiritual energy quickly poured into Old Rogers' soul space, reshaping his personality, modifying his memory, and consolidating his soul. "Dear Captain America! From now on, you become like me." Chapter 65 Black, Stop Squeezing It. The attitude of the Old Rogers who woke up changed drastically. Not only did he praise Yuri as the only savior recognized by Captain America, he also actively served as a teacher of human society knowledge for the mutant beasts. As a person who had been frozen in ice for 70 years and reintegrated into society, there was no one among everyone present. People know better than him how to integrate into society. Yuri was very satisfied and confident with his transformation. In order to prevent the new employee from being affected by the bad weather, he also specially gave Old Rogers a symbiotic reproductive suit that annihilated consciousness and soul. After receiving it, Old Rogers expressed great satisfaction. He had long had enough of the clown-like stars and stripes uniform, but in order to boost morale and cater to senior figures, he had to wear it and twist his American uniform on battlefields again and again. Buttocks. After seeing the full coverage of the symbiotic reproductive suit, he smiled and took the shield that Tiger gave him, and gave himself a very meaningful code name, Black. Firstly, this code name fits the jet black color of the symbiote reproductive suit, and secondly, it symbolizes his determination to remain anonymous. He said that he would reappear on the battlefield on behalf of Yuri one day in the future. In order not to cause too much trouble to the current Captain America Rogers, he even asked Yuri to erase the star stripes on the vibrating gold shield. It was replaced by a matte black color that goes well with the symbiote reproductive suit. Yuri expressed great satisfaction with the decision he made. Who doesn't want a loyal to appear in his team? The Old Rogers matter has come to an end. After completely relaxing physically and mentally with Vanex and Kate, he will start to make plans for the future development of the entire tribe. The total number of mutants is neither too much nor too little. In the heyday before the Eternals came to the Earth, the total number of mutant beasts that fed on the dinosaurs, the overlords of the Earth at that time, exceeded. Later, the dinosaurs were close to extinction, and the mutants' food sources were in short supply and the population dropped to around individuals. Later, when humans were born, the Celestials sent the Eternals to carry out an extermination siege and hunt for the mutants. This number began to plummet from a cliff, from 2, and from 2. By the time Yuri was killed when the Tama was sealed in a glacier in Alaska, the total number of mutants on the Earth was less than. Coupled with the injuries caused during the violent sealing and the cannibalism after being sealed, Yuri knew very well that even if he rescued all the mutants in the Arctic, the final number would never exceed 1,000. From 2. Only one of the once glorious apex predators remains. This is the indelible hatred between the mutants and the Eternals. 1 life is lost, 10 lives are returned. Yuri's vision has never been limited to on this small Earth, life is spread in every corner of the universe. In other words, the Eternals are also spread in every corner of the universe. As the leader, his future has a long way to go. If you want to avenge a big revenge, it is impossible to rely on him as a leader alone. The blood feud of the mutant tribe should be shared by every mutant tribe. Although the mutant tribe now has a high probability of being completely tortured when they meet the Eternal tribe one-on-one, but Yuri has the ability and confidence to make every mutant race grow. But growth comes at a price. He will not help all mutants evolve for free like the 5 shacks. Only by perfectly completing the tasks assigned by him can he quickly gain strength. This is qualified. Strategies to control your subordinates. Human transformation, super healing, magic and technology manufacturing, mind control, super speed, energy turret, symbiotic reproductive equipment, dragon mark restoration, dragon mark storage, dragon mark detonation. There are a lot of things. Although you can't take them all out at once, you can show them to whet their appetite. Greed and desire are always the best prescriptions to stimulate growth. If you want your subordinates to work hard for you, you have to take them out and they think they are worth it. The reward for working hard. The prizes have been prepared, all that's left is how to distribute them. The 1,000 members of the mutant tribe must all evolve. If the rewards of each mutant tribe are to be distributed by Yuri personally, although it will maximize his prestige and status in the tribe, but if he really does this, then he can't do anything day by day, he can only sit there and be a ruthless transmission machine. No, absolutely not. After Vanax felt comfortable, he consciously went to the ice cave to teach the mutant beasts human language. Only Kate was left in the ice cave to accompany Yuri, saying he wanted to make up for the fact that he didn't turn around to save the leader instead. The stupid behavior of turning around and running away is actually just too lazy to deal with the compatriots who have not shed their animalistic nature. Yuri had been deep in thought just now, so she huddled in her arms and didn't bother him. After hearing him muttering to himself, she raised her head and licked Yuri's frown and said shyly, "No, what's not good? I didn't think so just now." "That's it, are you still not satisfied? It has nothing to do with mating." Yuri pinched the long legs that were rubbing against each other, looked at Kate and asked seriously, "In addition to using the transmission tube to operate it myself, what other methods can be used to transfer the superpowers I have obtained to you and others? What about people? Kate started working on Yuri, not caring at all about the large white area on her chest. She thought hard for a while, and suddenly said with uncertainty, the superpower you gave me at the beginning can only be used by myself. But later, in the past few days, I discovered that when I used my superpowers, the symbiotic reproductive suit also secretly played a certain amplifying effect. This has never happened before, maybe. Symbiont. Yuri's eyes suddenly lit up. After the symbiote parasitizes the host for a certain period of time, it can copy the extraordinary genes in the host and amplify them to a certain extent. He once used this ability to combine the electrostatic adsorption, super agility, and spider power of the little spider. Superpowers such as induction have been engraved on his body, and so far they have been perfectly integrated with his own genes. This is indeed an idea that has a good chance of success. Yuri draped a thin blanket over Kate's body with a wave of his hand, blocking her charming body that was always exuding charm. He summoned his symbiotic reproductive suit, and easily created 2 seals with readily available ice cubes. Transparent box. He took out a ball of black slime from the black ball that was constantly struggling and beating like boiling asphalt. The number of symbionts collected from meteorites was limited, and this was the last one, but the way the symbionts reproduces through self-division and asexual reproduction. Since Yuri can control its soul and annihilate its consciousness, he can easily control its body, making him a fertility machine without emotions. Tick-tock. 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 Drop after drop of slightly trembling black mucus fell off the symbiote's body, and under Yuri's control, it accurately fell into the sealed ice box that had been prepared for them. The young symbiote rolled for 2 seconds in the crystal-clear icebox. Circle, after finding that he could not escape, he began to silently absorb dark energy to grow his size. Yuri saw that the ice boxes he had prepared were all filled, and then he let go of the limp mother symbiote in his hand. He had taken back control of the body and soul of the symbiote, but it seemed to have withered. Just as soft and motionless. If it could parasitize a host with a mouth and talk, I think what it would want to say most would be, "Stop squeezing it, I really don't have a drop left." Chapter 66. Damn, there are more. Taking back every last drop of the symbiote mother's body into the black ball to recharge, Yuri glanced at it. There were a total of 26 symbiotes in front of him, but the last few squeezed out were smaller than their older brothers and sisters. He seemed quite quiet, which must have been a congenital flaw. But none of that matters. Yuri transformed back into his mutant form in the blink of an eye, and inserted the transmission tube behind him into the young symbiote in the icebox one by one. Life energy poured into the jet-black symbiote's body along the blue-black tube. The grafting of superpowers was completed in just a few seconds. Kate, get a smarter guy in. Yuri planned to find a mutant beast to try out whether this idea would work, but just when Kate turned around to follow suit, he suddenly thought of a brand new candidate. Forget it, call the old, Sunshi over, you are not allowed to call him Old Rogers anymore, he can only be black, do you understand? It is estimated that this experiment will take several days to see results. If you want to find mutant beasts to do the experiment, not to mention whether their poor vocabulary accumulation can accurately describe the changes in the body, the uncontrollable bestiality will be a headache. Extremely problematic, in comparison, loyal black is much better. Yuri was very relieved that the former Captain America had become like himself. Before the two of them returned to the ice cave, Yuri spent a long time choosing among the symbiote cubs who had received his superpowers. Black was positioned as a warrior who could compete with anyone, therefore, auxiliary superpowers such as super healing and technology and magic manufacturing are excluded first. Combined with the captain's personal combat style of charge the hardest and take the hardest hits, the only options available to him are Spider-Man's super strength, super agility, spider sense, and the Eternal's super speed. There are several superpowers to choose from. Yuri considers himself a democratic leader who pays great attention to the personal opinions of his subordinates, so he plans to let Black choose by himself. Leader. Black never released its full coverage mode after putting on the symbiotic reproductive suit. Even after seeing Yuri, it still wrapped itself tightly. He glanced at the 4 ice boxes containing symbiote cubs suspended in front of him, raised his head in confusion and asked, "Chief, I already have a symbiote reproductive suit. You are too weak." Yuri looked at him and said truthfully, "Even if you are wearing a symbiotic reproductive suit, you are still someone I can knock down with one punch. With your strength, I really don't know how you will face so many crises in the future." Those who survived the battle. Seeing Wyukai bowing his head in shame, he pointed to the 4 ice boxes suspended in the air and introduced, they can give you super strength, super agility, spider sense, and super speed respectively. You know your own situation best. Choose one of them to make up for your shortcomings. I choose super speed. Suanzin neither asked why he could only choose one or whether he could choose a few more, nor how much increase these superpowers could bring to him. A lifetime of fighting made him clearly know what he needed most. That is, you can get to the enemy faster and swing your fist faster. Very good. Seeing how straightforward he was, Yuri didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, as long as he kept working under him, these superpowers would fall on Suanshi sooner or later. It didn't have much impact on who was earlier and who was later. All the symbiote cubs had their souls and consciousness wiped out long before Kate and the two returned to the ice cave. Yuri handed the ice box that was imbued with super speed to Black and the remaining 3. Take it back to the black ball space. He is still not very proficient in the use of storage dragon patterns, so he still uses black balls for convenience. As short as 1 or 2 days, as long as 10 days, the super speed superpower will be integrated into your body by the symbiotic reproductive suit through genetic recombination. Yuri patted Black's shoulder and said, every day report the integration progress to me at dinner, and remember to return this symbiote to me after the integration is completed, as there are others who need it. Black crushed the ice box in front of Yuri. The young symbiont met a fresh host, and the only remaining body instinct allowed it to quickly get into the body that already had the predecessor, covering the old Roger's body. The symbiotic reproductive suit on the body moved slightly, and the next moment Xianxi nodded goodbye to Yuri, and disappeared into the ice cave with an inconspicuous golden tail. As the saying goes, the master leads the door, and the punishment depends on the individual. What Xianxi has now is just the seed of super speed. How fast he can run depends on his personal development of this superpower starting from today. Chief, let's continue mating. Kate glanced at the pitch-black sky outside the ice cave and thought of Yuri's order to mating only at night and couldn't help but shout God help me 3 times in her heart. But Yuri just waved her hand impatiently and pushed her aside. He sat cross-legged on the ice bed covered with blankets. He said, I want you to protect me in my practice, and put his consciousness into his soul space. After the dragon soul forced out the 2 old Yinbai who were hiding outside the soul space and burned them to death that day, Yuri always wanted to go out to see if they were dead or not, but the fire of the dragon soul burned the entire soul space once again. It greatly increased its firmness, so much so that Yuri has not been able to break through his own blockade so far. He used the explosion dragon pattern to destroy old Rogers's wall of will, and he also wanted to experiment. After all, the introduction of this thing said it can explode everything with its own energy, but no one knew it. Does this idealistic soul space belong to the conceptual category of all things? Fortunately, the experiment was successful. Old Rogers, who had transformed into the shape of Yuri, fully proved the vast scope of the dragon mark business of detonation. Then Yuri planned to attack himself now, detonate his soul space barrier, and find the hiding place and burial place of the old Yinbai. It will definitely hurt. Old Roger's head that was half lifted and then stepped back into the ground is enough to show the great pain that he has to endure after detonating. But Yuri believes that he will gain a lot. Yuri is covered in magic shields. Let's not mention Ambrosius for the moment. As for the time traveler who consumed % of the dragon soul, how can you say that he didn't leave any legacy? Impossible, at least Yuri would never believe it. At this moment, in the golden soul space that was smudged by the dragon soul fire, Yuri used his memory to find the place where Yuri Ambrosius first entered the soul space from outside the space barrier. This place is now smooth. Incomparable, even if you touch it with your hand, you can't feel any looseness. Yuri's eyes flashed, and he no longer hesitated. He directly controlled a small ball of dragon soul fire the size of a mung bean and slowly seeped into the seemingly indestructible soul space barrier. The mysterious dragon pattern was slowly outlined by spiritual energy. Slow shaping. Finally, the 2 preparatory tasks were completed at almost the same time. Yuri's disembodied soul took a deep breath, and resolutely controlled the detonation of the dragon pattern and rushed towards a small piece of soul space barrier that was roasted to golden color on both sides by the dragon soul fire. The moment the 2 came into contact, Yuri's face darkened. Damn, there are more. Chapter 67. This wave is very fat, the next wave will be even fatter. It's like a big hole was dug in the head, and the pain that permeated the whole soul made Yuri's face twitch uncontrollably. He felt that after this matter was over, it was necessary for him to use the detonating dragon pattern in a more delicate way. You must know that the equivalent is too large, and sometimes it will cause bad things. Fortunately, after experiencing the test of Dragon Soul Fire, he had a certain ability to withstand the pain in his soul, so in just a few seconds, he was able to restrain the pain and focus his attention again. The outside of the soul space seemed to be a void of chaos. It didn't seem to be dangerous based on the feeling. Yuri used part of his soul body to go in and out of the hole in the barrier to test it several times. The feedback he got was that this void chaos had a negative impact on the soul body. There is no special impact. The only difference from being in the soul space is that Yuri has lost the ability to do whatever he wants. To ensure nothing went wrong, he transformed the Dragon Soul Fire into a rope and wrapped it around his waist. This way, if something happened, he could control the rope to pull himself back to the soul space immediately. Breathe, breathe, breathe. The moment Yuri emerged from the soul space, both the whistling sound of the Dragon Soul Fire and the sound of his breathing disappeared. It felt as if he had suddenly come from the earth into the vacuum of the universe. Same. Yuri had expected this, because everything in the soul space is incorporeal. How can incorporeal things make sounds? The reason why he can hear these sounds in the soul space is because he subconsciously thinks that these sounds should be heard by him. Now that he is out of the soul space, this idealistic freedom disappears, and all the sounds he imagined are naturally gone. Exist again. There was nothing to draw on in the chaotic void outside the soul space, so Yuri had no choice but to let the rope transformed by the Dragon Soul Fire lead him to float quietly outside the space like a balloon. Except for the golden spherical soul space that looked like a small sun, Yuri did not see anything other than chaotic nothingness. Just when he wanted to give up exploring and return to the soul space, he found that in the spherical soul space on the invisible backside of the soul space, there is a small multicolored sphere revolving around the soul space at an extremely slow speed. Upon seeing this, Yuri realized clearly that his soul space and the soul space of Yuri Ambrosius and the travelers were not connected to each other. The relationship between them should be like the celestial bodies in the universe that follow universal gravity. In the same space, different speeds are performed around the movement. Just like solar and lunar eclipses, this phenomenon can only be seen when certain conditions are met. While Yuri was thinking, the colorful small sphere was already in front of him. Yuri controlled the Dragon Soul Fire wrapped around his waist to constantly zoom and adjust his position in order to stand exactly on the colorful sphere. On the only way. At the same time, he stretched out his hand to infiltrate his spiritual energy into the surface of the approaching sphere, and the mysterious detonating dragon pattern was outlined and formed more and more skillfully. This is not my soul space. It shouldn't hurt anymore, right? After a while, the runes took shape, and the colorful sphere came right in front of Yuri. There was no sound and no light. It was like a chocolate ball that had been smashed by someone's hand. There was an extremely irregular crack on the edge of this colorful small sphere. Yuri branched out a ray of spiritual consciousness and went in to investigate. There were some things inside. But he felt that there was no danger. Seeing that the sphere was about to pass by, he no longer hesitated, and after lengthening the rope of soul fire around his waist, drilled straight into the inside of the sphere. Surprisingly, the ability to do whatever you want can also be used in this soul space belonging to Yuri Ambrosius. Without going too deep into it, Yuri had a change of thought, and the gentle white light instantly illuminated the dim internal environment. A chair, a table, a single bed, books on the table and a shield and long sword hanging from the bed. Yuri looked at the name of the book and immediately cursed Merlin Ambrosius for being an old bastard. It clearly said Merlin Ambrosius Encyclopedia of Magic. As long as you are not stupid, you can know this. This is where Master Merlin's true knowledge inheritance lies. But Ancient One said that Merlin's magic inheritance is in Comitage. This may be true, but if Yuri rashly goes there without getting this Encyclopedia of Magic, being left alive is probably the simplest end. After all, theoretically speaking, Merlin's closest blood relatives, the descendants of this generation of the Ambrosius family, who were descended from a single line, were completely wiped out in his own hands. Carefully opening the cover of the Encyclopedia of Magic, a golden light shot out towards Yuri, scanning him aside for a moment and then returning to the first page of the book, as if there was an invisible quill in the dark. As if waving, the words Yuri Ambrosius representing the original owner of the soul body slowly disappeared, replaced by Yuri Ambrosius representing Yuri. Call. The whole process was so bland that it was unbelievable, but the Encyclopedia of Magic that came and went as quickly as he commanded it showed that he had indeed become the new owner of this book. When he couldn't figure it out, he put it down temporarily. Yuri put the Encyclopedia of Magic away with him and turned his attention to the ancient round shield and English longsword hanging on the bedside. After being inherited by the Ambrosius family, the palm of his hand was branded with 2 marks, a shield and a sword, but no matter how he drove it, these 2 things were like real tattoos without any feedback. Seeing this decoration hanging above the bed, Yuri roughly guessed the prerequisites for using the Holy Shield and Holy Sword. First, you must have a mark, which is a pass. With it, the Holy Shield and Holy Sword, only then will they obey your orders and act. Secondly, you must truly have the Holy Shield and the Holy Sword, otherwise you will be like a bear commander holding a tiger talisman but no one can use it. For a bear commander, let alone the tiger talisman, take the national jade seal. It's useless in the hand. After all, guesses are just guesses, and the only way to verify guesses is to practice. Yuri has already explored it. In this soul space that clearly belongs to Yuri Ambrosius, only the Encyclopedia of Magic on the table and the shield and sword in front of the bed cannot be affected by his whims. Yes, what does this mean? This means that this shield and sword are the Holy Shield and Holy Sword that Yuri lacks. Stepping on the bed where the original owner slept, Yuri took off the Holy Shield and Holy Sword hanging above the bed without hesitation. OM. A slight tremor came from the Holy Shield and the Holy Sword. Yuri-Fu's soul came. And he sent his spiritual will into the simple shield and sword that opened his mouth to beg for food. Clang! A shield and a sword came out of his hand, and they circled around Yuri affectionately, and finally they were honestly attached to their master's back through some incomprehensible method. Like the branches and leaves that quickly withered after the fruit was picked, starting from the bed Yuri stepped on, the entire spherical soul space began to crack inch by inch. Seeing this, he stopped stopping and patted the hard heel plate on his waist. Brick-like Encyclopedia of Magic, he jumped out of this colorful sphere that was constantly being destroyed. This wave is very fat, and the next wave will be even fatter. Yuri is extremely confident in the time traveler. Chapter 68 Minimally invasive but no anesthesia. With the Encyclopedia of Magic and the Holy Shield and the Holy Sword, Yuri also had something to draw on in the chaotic void. He controlled the soul fire rope around his waist to tighten quickly, pulling his soul body around the golden soul space turned around. He doesn't know how long he has been in Yuri Ambrosius's soul space, so much so that the rope of soul fire has been wrapped around his soul space for more than 2 times. This also makes Yuri try to collect it. As he pulled the rope, he was able to see the entirety of his soul space, which was more than 100 times larger than the colorful sphere that had shattered into nothingness. Just like this, while retracting the rope and circling, Yuri soon saw the second spherical object surrounding his soul space in the chaotic void. The surface of this sphere was silvery white with a very sci-fi feel. From a distance, more like a steel ball made of metal. There is a big discrepancy between the trajectory of this steel ball and the root of the rope. Fortunately, Yuri was able to use his strength in this chaotic void, otherwise it would really be invisible and intangible. The holy sword attached to his back sensed the master's intention, trembled slightly and then quickly stopped at the feet of Yuri's soul body. The moment it came into contact with the holy sword, Yuri immediately felt the power of advancement under his feet, and he was very interested. After playing around for a while, he imitated the appearance of the Shushan sword immortal in his memory, held the sword skills in his hands, stepped on the British immortal sword and quickly moved towards the steel ball. Knocking twice on the outer wall of the steel ball, it felt harder than the soul space of Yuri Ambrosius. It was not 130. Yuri considered for a moment and slightly increased the spiritual energy that penetrated the outer wall of the steel ball in order to it can blast through this barrier in one go. He had already experimented through Yuri Ambrosius's soul space just now. If he detonated other people's soul space, he would not feel any pain. In this case, there is nothing to be afraid of. 4 words and it's over. A small half of the outer wall of the silver-white steel ball was destroyed by the explosion, and the aftermath spread into the soul space of the traverser, smashing the originally orderly decorations into pieces and leaving the ground in a mess. The corner of Yuri's mouth twitched as he stepped on the holy sword. Damn, it's too much. But this big explosion also eliminated the potential danger in the soul space of the traveler. At least there is no need to worry about the possibility that his soul body will be destroyed by unknown means as soon as he enters. After all, the properties of this soul space have been changed. From the secret room it has become an open air, and you can see what is inside and what is not at a glance. Yuri stepped on the holy sword and entered the soul space of the traveler. The explosion just now did cause a lot of damage to it. Visible to the naked eye, ferocious cracks spread around the space barrier like spreading tentacles. Time is very tight for this wave of material collection. Beds, tables, chairs, mobile phones, computers, instant noodles, cola, silicone beauty. Yuri kicked the naked dummy into the chaotic void outside the soul space, secretly cursed what the hell, and ruled out all the objects that could be affected by whatever you want. Yuri turned around and bowed his head. He cast his gaze on a white fluorescent ball that seemed to suddenly fall to the ground from mid-air. The sixth sense told Yuri that there was no danger. The Encyclopedia of Magic on his waist and the holy sword and holy shield on his back did not detect anything strange. Yuri was relieved, squatted down and stretched out his hand towards the fluorescent ball the size of a football to touch it. Pick it up from the ground. SHH. At the moment of contact with Yuri's soul body, the ball of light penetrated into his soul along Yuri's fingers like a symbiosis. Yuri squatted on the ground in a daze, then quickly stood up to observe the situation of his own soul. The Encyclopedia of Magic on his waist remained motionless, and the holy shield and holy sword on his back showed no reaction. What's even more incredible is that such a large light ball entered a soul body with a transparency of 50%, and Yuri was actually in his own soul body. No foreign objects can be seen. Just when Yuri began to doubt whether a ball of light the size of a football had penetrated into his soul just now, a mechanically synthesized voice without any emotion sounded from the depths of his soul. The hang-up system is successfully bound. Then an invisible and intangible milky white light curtain suddenly appeared in Yuri's sight. Host, Yuri Ambrosius. Available skills, super healing, mind control, technological side manufacturing, magic side manufacturing, super speed, energy control, super strength, super agility, spider sense, electrostatic adsorption, dragon pattern. Idle column, 3. Points for adding columns, 2. What the fuck? As soon as Yuri thought, the transparency of the milky white light screen dropped from 90% to less than 30%. He used his free will to create a mirror in front of him that was enough to reflect his whole body. He could see himself in it, baring his teeth and claws. But he couldn't see the milky white light curtain floating in front of his eyes. On the outer wall of the traveler's soul space, spreading cracks have covered the entire silver-white sphere. In some places with larger cracks, you can even see the chaotic nothingness outside. Yuri checked everything in the space one last time to make sure there was nothing. After being unable to be affected by his will, he immediately tightened the rope of soul fire around his waist and quickly rushed toward the crack in the barrier of his soul space by stepping on the holy sword that crawled under his feet. If the guess is correct, this milky white light curtain that can be opened and closed at will should be the golden finger that every traveler will be equipped with in the memory of the traveler. Listen to the voice that sounds deep in the soul. This now my own golden finger is called hang-up system? The name sounds ordinary, and I don't know if it is powerful or not. The cracks in the golden soul space barrier have almost completely healed themselves. If the rope of soul fire hadn't been stuck there, he might have had to use it to detonate the dragon mark again when he came back. The insubstantial soul body can naturally pass through easily. The hole in the barrier is as thick as the soul fire rope. But the holy shield, holy sword, and encyclopedia of magic don't have his ability to bend and stretch. Do you really want to explode again? Yuri felt a little scared. Just when he was hesitating, he suddenly thought of the problem behind it, the holy sword. If I remember correctly, this is an artifact that can cut all things. It is just a soul space barrier. Not a problem. Cutting with the holy sword can also be precisely controlled. Unlike detonating dragon marks, you never know the extent of the explosion that will occur. Between minimally invasive surgery and tearing, should I choose the latter? Yuri pulled out the holy sword from his back, and inserted it into the golden soul space barrier like a hot knife cutting oil. The pain like needle pricks was transmitted into his soul in waves as the holy sword in his hand cut back and forth. Yuri endured this not too severe but still uncomfortable feeling and cut a flat crescent-shaped gap in the barrier. He first flattened the holy shield and sent it into the soul space along the gap, and then pushed the Encyclopedia of Magic in using the same method. Finally, he held the holy sword in one hand and entered it together with the soul body that could not only bend, stretch, but also flatten. Soul space. The holy sword was so capable of cutting that he was worried that if he just threw it in, it would come out from the other side of the soul space. Although the incision of microtrauma is small, it does not require anesthesia. Chapter 69. Host, Yuri Ambrosius. Available skills, super healing, mind control, technological side manufacturing, magic side manufacturing, super speed, energy control, super strength, super agility, spider sense, electrostatic adsorption, dragon pattern. Idle column, 3 points for adding columns, 2. The milky white panel looms in the fire of the dragon soul. Yuri leans on the sofa in the soul space and watches it retrieve the memory belonging to the traverser over and over again. Except for clarifying the meaning of hang up, he doesn't get any useful information. It's said to be a system, but it's actually just a panel. There's no novice guidance or novice gift packs, which means Yuri doesn't even know where the 2 additional column points come from. It's useless to think about it. Whether this system is powerful or not, you will know if you try it. The operation of the system is very ordinary mind control. Yuri first consumed all the 2 slot points, and the number behind the idle slot immediately changed from 3 to 5. There were no special effects, no strange feeling, it just gave him a feeling. It seems to be a simple numerical change. Super healing, mind control. Yuri didn't know if the on-hook skills could be taken off after being on-hook, and he didn't know if the skills in the on-hook mode could still be used, so he chose them very carefully. If it's the first one, let's pick a dispensable one to test the waters. He quickly selected the first skill to enter the idle state among all the skills that can be idled, the superpower copied from the little spider. As a mutant, Yuri's own strength is very good, although it cannot be compared with the infinitely enhanced comparable to the Hulk, but still on par with Thor. So even if the AFK skill cannot be used, strength will not be his shortcoming. After selection, the content on the milky white panel was updated instantly. Host, Yuri Ambrosius. Available skills, super healing, mind control, technological side manufacturing, magic side manufacturing, super speed, energy control, super agility, spider sense, electrostatic adsorption, dragon pattern. Idle column, 4 points for adding columns, 0. On-hook skill, super power. Note, skills that have been idle cannot be changed within 1 year, and the normal use of skills will not be affected during the idle period. When Yuri saw the last line of words, his expression suddenly relaxed. As long as it does not affect the use, let alone it cannot be changed within a year, even if it cannot be changed forever, it will not have any impact on him. Although the system in the memory of the time traveler is no matter how powerful, the son of destiny who gets the system is so awesome, but he always believes in one thing, that is, the improvement of strength can never be borrowed from external things. So even though this hang-up may be rubbish, as long as it does not affect his normal use of skills, Yuri is confident that he can still make full progress. After knowing this, Yuri was no longer so cautious about which skill he chose to hang up. In line with the concept of maximizing the use of resources as much as possible, he decisively selected Dragon Mark as the second skill to be hung up. Anyway, it doesn't affect the use, just treat it as a proficiency gain. There is no quantitative indication of the idle effect of this rubbish system, but assuming that the proficiency rate of each idle skill is the same, putting the most difficult to learn and practice skills will definitely bring the greatest benefits. Number 3, Super Speed. 4th, Energy Manipulation. Not knowing how to increase slot points and constantly acquire new skills, Yuri felt that leaving an empty slot was a good choice. Hey! Yuri closed the panel, leaned on the sofa and took a long breath to relax completely. The matter between the time traveler and Yuri Ambrosius was finally completely over. From now on, he no longer had to worry about his hard work. The hard-earned strength will be used as wedding clothes for others. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. The first batch of mutants rescued from the seal have recovered their vitality. Not only that, under the words and deeds of the 5 shacks in black, several talented guys have learned to hide their bestiality and become the second batch of Yuri's compatriots who turned into humans. After letting them each choose the same super symbiote they liked, Yuri organized a group of mutant beasts who had become bestiality because they had nothing to do. They came to the second sealing point and divided the dozens of mutant beasts into 5 and 5 parts. After leaving behind the fragrant cake, the first group to dig up the sealed super symbiote will be rewarded for the whole group. Yuri found an ice cave nearby to continue his life of asceticism. But at this moment, Hei Se, who was wearing a full coverage symbiote reproductive suit, approached. He successfully integrated super speed into himself 2 days ago. These days, you can always see him running wildly in the ice and snow fields. Could he be here to get new superpowers? Boss, I want to find my past self. Yuri was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that he wanted to find himself who was still sleeping under the ice 70 years ago. Rogers Sr. looking for Rogers Jr. sounds quite interesting. After Yuri carefully checked his modified memory and soul to make sure there were no problems, he asked Chat to go with him. Monitoring the old Rogers was not the main purpose. The main purpose was to quickly find the American who had been a popsicle for 70 years. Team leader. I heard that this unfortunate thing was buried in the ice tens of meters underground. Without the life perception that comes with super healing, even if old Rogers had an extremely precise target, it would not be easy to find his past self. After all the trivial matters were dealt with, Yuri looked at the time on the anti-freeze clock. It was already 58, in the evening. He gathered his mind and concentrated on preparing for today's idle profit. After these 7 days, he has completely retracted his words such as "this is really a rubbish system." Without him, the daily benefits given to him by the idle skills are really great. Each idle skill is settled once a day, and the income is paid out once a day. After actual verification, the daily idle income of each skill is as good as the result of focusing on a certain skill for a day. 5 idle slots, 4 out of 4 idle slots, this is completely equivalent to using his 1 day as 5 days. Let's not mention super strength, super speed, and telepathy for the moment. After all, the base number is too high and the foundation is too good. In just 7 days, no obvious effect can be noticed at all, but the dragon pattern is different. The on-hook system classifies all-encompassing dragon patterns into one skill, but in fact Yuri can subjectively control which specific dragon pattern it focuses on, such as detonating. In just 4 days, he was able to accidentally destroy himself. The blaster Ziobai who was killed by the blast became a blasting expert who could blow up whatever he wanted, and become whatever he wanted to be. If it hadn't been for this on-hook system, who would have known that the effect of detonation not only depends on the amount and quality of the injected energy, but also on the quality of the condensed detonation dragon pattern. If I had to explore by myself, I don't know how many 4 days it would take to find this blind spot. All in all, Yuri's assessment is: hey, it smells so good. Chapter 70 Icarus. The mutant beasts are all walking excavators. Not only is the second seal point buried deeper than the first seal point, but the geology is much more complicated than the first one. But for dozens of mutant beasts, it was obviously not a particularly complicated task. It only took 3 days for the first group of mutated beasts to dig out the seal body to stand out. With their animal nature still intact and their intelligence still intact, most of the superpowers chosen by mutant beasts were super strength or super speed. For this reason, Yuri had to squeeze the poor mother symbiote again. At this moment, Yuri is standing alone on a huge seal that stretches thousands of meters, carefully studying this creation of the Eternals. In order to improve his magic level, he has carefully studied magic in the past few days. Encyclopedia. The two superpowers of magic side manufacturing and technology side manufacturing are closely related to his own level of technological knowledge reserve and magic knowledge reserve level. This is also the reason why Yuri has to save Tony Stark many times, whether it is the current arc the reactor, or the future Mobius strip time shuttle, these ridiculously dark technological creations. It is estimated that only Tony, who is cursed by knowledge, can create them. Even if you look at the entire universe, the arc reactor is still a technological creation with a high technical content. Since learning its production methods and principles, Yuri's level in technological manufacturing is still not as good as that of this number. 1,000 years of Fastos, but the difference is not very big. After starting to study the Encyclopedia of Magic, the gap between the two on the magic side has also narrowed rapidly. Here Yuri would like to express his special thanks for his appearance. He can only be said to be the almighty observer of the universe. Encyclopedia of Magic explains magic in a simple and profound way, which really benefited Yuri a lot. Coupled with the fact that he can have the seal of the Eternals as a basis for comparison with reality, his progress can be called super fast. It still doesn't work. Yuri stood on the first layer of seals and sighed. No matter how fast he progressed, he would not be able to catch up with Fastos in a short time. Just like this first layer of seals, he had already memorized all the magic runes on it. But I only know less than % of them, plus the wonderful combinations between various runes. Stand back, I'll blow up the seal. 13 rays of golden energy shot out from Yuri's body towards several special positions of the seal. If you can't understand it, you can't understand it, but it doesn't affect my ability to find your weak points. Yuri waved his hand. 13 The detonating dragon patterns with different energy levels and reactions were formed almost in an instant. They were controlled and combined with their corresponding explosives to become one. Only the explosion sound of the 13 aggregates was heard, and the first layer of formation flashed. After a few blows, it shattered. The second, third, and fourth layers are all done in the same way. Remember the rune groups above, learn their physical structures, and after finding the weak point, use the detonating dragon pattern to destroy it. The movement this time was much smaller than the first time. Before the last layer of seal was broken, it didn't even wake up the mutant beasts sleeping under the seal. Yuri fully absorbed the experience of the last time. As early as the third to last layer was broken, when the first layer of seal was sealed, he turned back to his true form of the mutant race early. The powerful momentum and familiar breath instantly awakened a group of mutant beasts that were in good condition. Yuri injected a burst of life energy into each of them to help the tribesmen quickly recover from their dormant state. Ho ho ho! The roars of beasts in the deep pits under the frozen soil are constant. Among them are the joy and excitement of seeing the light of day and being free again, as well as gratitude and surrender to the leader of the mutant tribe, but more importantly, they are expressing their gratitude to the eternal tribe who have sealed them for hundreds of years. Hatred and anger. This blood debt must be paid with the blood of the enemy. Meanwhile, South Dakota. The Eternal Farm is worthy of its name. It is a farm that has been passed down for hundreds of years. Its owner has settled here since the founding of the United States. It seems that it has received special favor from God. The farmer's family was lucky enough to avoid all wars, because their offspring is always a girl who is not old enough to leave the court and is inconvenient to interact with outsiders. Regardless of good weather or severe drought, the farm can always produce good output. Coupled with the farmer's good management skills, Yonghung Farm has become the largest one in the surrounding area through continuous acquisitions and mergers. However, the farmer has been living in seclusion all year round. Not many people have passed her. At this time, it was dark and windy, and the dark and dim Eternal Farm welcomed an uninvited guest. Icarus frowned and descended from the sky. There was a weak special induction between the Eternals. The farther apart they were, the weaker the induction. He slowly landed in front of the door of the small wooden house located in the boundless wilderness and pushed gently. He opened the door, which was not locked at all. Click! The soft yellow light instantly illuminated the living room on the first floor of the wooden house, with holes in the walls, an overturned sofa, a smashed TV, and deep scratches all around. Icarus clenched his fists in an instant, and the hot rays that he held back made his eyes red. He struggled to pick up a piece of rag contaminated by dark red on the ground. A man who was unwilling to face but the fact that it really happened is right in front of this 10-man group with the highest combat power. The mutants are back. A Jack was killed. Looking around with red eyes, he did not find a Jack's body nearby. The absence of a body means that the Eternals have lost the ability to contact the Supreme Elitham of the God group. The leader died, and the Supreme cannot be contacted. The successive blows made this top fighter who was accustomed to obeying orders suddenly feel confused. Comrade, I still have comrades. As if he saw a torch representing light in the endless night, Icarus suddenly rose up from the ground like a madman. The fear and anger in his heart that had nowhere to vent seemed to become the fuel that propelled him to fly. Huge sonic boom circles followed. It soared into the sky in a straight line, and the thunder-like sound disturbed countless sleeping cattle and sheep. For a moment, the entire Eternal Farm suddenly became lively. Circe, Water Elf, Gilgamesh, Tina, Ginge, Makari, Druid, Phostos. Icarus's speed remained above the speed of sound. At this moment, he no longer cared about whether he would be observed by human satellites. If the mutants came back, a Jack would definitely not be the only member of the Eternals killed. Thinking of the powerless Circe and the Water Elf who could do nothing but create illusions, his heart trembled violently. One is the goddess who kicked me away, and the other is the licking dog who licked me till I got there. Not one can be missing. As for the others? Let me confirm the safety of my ex-girlfriend first. A series of sonic boom circles are so conspicuous in the quiet night sky. Not long after, Tony, who was sleeping soundly with his arms around Pepper, was awakened by phone calls one after another. Pepper woke up and listened to the voice on the other end of the phone. Hello, Mr. Stark, I am Agent John from the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Bureau. I need to know the purpose of your flight to the UK. You know, this is a very important diplomacy. The purpose of my flight to England. Tony glanced at Pepper, who was sleeping soundly on his arm, and said with a puzzled look on his face, I am sleeping at home, and I have no plans to fly to the UK in the near future. What on earth are you talking about? Sorry for disturbing you. The phone was hung up instantly. John Garriott took a look at the traced signal source. There was no doubt that it was in Tony's big villa. Just when he was wondering whether Tony had used technology to cover up the source of the signal, the satellite finally captured the unknown signal. Clear images of flying objects. Looking at the man in the trench coat surrounded by the detonation ring, Garriott's eyes instantly narrowed. He motioned to his colleagues who were also surprised to be quiet. He walked to the corner and dialed the number of the current director Alexander Pierce. Chapter 71 The Challenge of Being Overwhelmed. Late at night, a penthouse in a high-end apartment in New York City. The light in the study room suddenly came on, and then an elderly man in a nightgown, with eyes full of sleepiness but with unusual seriousness, came in. He turned on the computer on the desk and checked a few photos sent by his subordinates. "Oh, I bought it." Pierce zoomed in on the man flying in the sky at supersonic speeds, and his angular face proved that he was not wearing any device to assist flight. After pondering for a moment, he opened the browser and entered a string of garbled URLs. After a while, the entire computer automatically shut down and restarted, and an ugly octopus-shaped red icon filled the entire desktop. Yuri, who is far away in the North Pole, does not know that the mutants have been exposed to the sight of the Eternals. After breaking the second seal, the work of digging the seal to rescue his compatriots has entered the fast lane. Every 1 or 2 days, the mutant beasts at the sealing point were rescued. The closer to the core of the Arctic Circle, the denser the sealing points set by the Eternals, which provided great convenience for the search work. This also means that Yuri has no time to settle down and study magic seriously these days. He is either busy breaking seals or going to sealing points to break seals every day. Although the repetitive work was boring, he also felt fulfilled and happy from the bottom of his heart seeing the increasing number of mutated beasts and the growing strength of individual mutated beasts. Accompanied by roars of beasts one after another, Yuri, surrounded by a crowd of mutated beasts, landed on the excavated seal body. This was one of the only 2 remaining life sites after investigation, but after Yuri's, if you look carefully, this may be the last sealing point for mutants. It is not only the mutants who are trapped under the endless frozen soil of the Arctic. According to the news that Yuri learned from the mother symbiote, Grendel, the black dragon parasitized by the god of symbiotes, Grendel, is also in the center of the Arctic Circle. There is reason to speculate that the last place of life is its sleeping place. There must be some ideas, but they will have to wait until all the mutant races break out of the seal. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, all 9 layers of seals were quickly blown up. Yuri was suspended in mid-air, using his momentum and breath to gently awaken the last batch of sleeping mutant beasts. Hoo! 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 Listening to these extremely aggressive beast roars, Yuri frowned deeply. Not only that, the mutant beasts who were watching looked at me and I looked at you, and fell into an unprecedented silence. Roar! Hit the old leader! Support the new leader! Roar! You have led the entire mutant race to destruction, you are not worthy of sitting in the leader's position. Ho! Change! Change! Amidst the shouts of skinny but loud anti-party mutant beasts, a fat and strong mutant beast with fierce eyes bumped away a group of younger brothers who supported him with loud voices. Came in front of him with a long look. Roar! The roar of this beast was so loud that it completely drowned out all the previous feeble sounds. It stared at Yuri who was slowly falling to the ground and pawed at it. Its intention to attack was self-evident. Are you sure you want to challenge me as leader? There was no kindness in Yuri's eyes when he looked at this mutant beast. The number of mutant beasts that survived the last sealing point was ridiculously small, but the bones piled up around it were one after another. Cannibalism, this is what it means, the reason why this mutated beast is fat and strong. Roar! The old king shall die, the new king shall be established. This mutant beast glanced disdainfully at Yuri, who was so thin that he was almost the same as a human. The bigger the body, the stronger the power. This is the ancestors' battle with the dinosaurs. It has learned the true meaning of evolution through thousands of years of fighting. Although it doesn't know what the old leader in front of it has experienced in the hundreds of years since it was sealed, but with its current size, it is confident that it can kill him with a slap. Roar! The mutants do not accept defeat. If you want to surrender first, then offer me your tiny head here. The mutated beast glanced at the 5 shacks who were watching the show with their hands folded with some fear. He had already looked over just now. Of all the mutated tribesmen present, except for the 5 leaders' personal guards, none of them were of similar size. He's still big. Ho! In the battle for the leader, personal guards are not allowed to appear. What are you waiting for, my thin and short old leader? A trace of violence flashed in Yuri's eyes. He did not look at the mutant beast whose fate was already destined. Instead, he turned his attention to the dozen mutant beasts hiding behind it and cheering, "Ho! The consequences of being loyal to it. Have you really figured it out? Now every mutant beast is a valuable resource. If these rebellious mutant beasts go astray and turn on themselves, he doesn't mind suppressing his inner reaction and temporarily letting them live. But it turns out that no rebel can repent." These dozen mutated beasts heard Yuri's inquiry and responded with a louder voice, "Ho! The old king shall die, and the new king shall stand. Call." Yuri lowered his head and sighed. This last sealing point was all in vain. Under the watchful eyes of all the mutant beasts, his figure disappeared in an instant, without using the power of space, without using the power of magic, just relying on the power of his physical body at this moment. He was actually within this extremely short distance. Let yourself move faster than the speed of sound in an instant. Bang! Bang! The first sound was the sound of a sonic boom ring exploding, and the second sound was the sound of Yuri's fist and the new leader's head colliding with each other. The two sounds sounded almost at the same time, and the 5 people except Shaq could clearly see the details. In addition, the remaining mutant beasts only had their ears dazzled and their eyes dazzled, and the leader took over the position of the new leader. As for the new leader, his cervical vertebra was directly broken by this punch, and he was lying on the ground twitching at the moment. Yuri summoned the symbiotic reproductive suit amidst the begging cries of more than a dozen rebels and turned it into a long black knife. He only heard a few swish sounds, and together with their new leader, the heads of all the rebels all separated from the neck. Yuri used a long knife to pierce the new leader's head, which was more than halfway collapsed, and raised it high above his head. "I am the leader of the mutant race. Whether past, present or future. Anyone who rebels will be killed without mercy." The chilling sound mixed with spiritual energy was transmitted into the minds of every silent mutant clansman, like a sudden bell ringing, instantly awakening the emotions of all the mutant beasts. "Who? Who? Who? Chief! Chief! Chief!" Yuri shook his head stuck on the tip of the knife to the side, took back the symbiote reproductive suit and slowly rose into the air. In this huge pit dug by the mutant's hands, which was meters long, he looked at all the mutant beasts one by one. "In my eyes, some of them have opened their minds, some have not lost their animal nature, some are standing on the ground, and some are hanging on the rock wall that goes straight up and down. But no matter which one, when it looks at Yuri, at that time, the faith and fanaticism in his eyes were exactly the same. We are, mutants. Who? Who? Who?" Chapter 72 I'm just investigating, not fighting. Icarus found Circe, a teacher, and the homeless water elf in London. After confirming that the two had never seen the mutant race again before, he told them the news of the death of the leader Ajak. After a short period of grief, the 3 people split up and prepared to gather all the Eternals again. Amazon jungle, Mumbai, Iraq, Chicago, Australia. To the despair of the 3 people, they only found Gilgamesh and Tina, who opened the hotel in Australia, while all other Eternals had no news, no one alive, no corpse. "I'm going to the North Pole." Icarus was wearing a dark blue simple battle robe. The moment he stood up, he overturned the solid wood chair that held him. The table was full of barbecue and beer, but the 4 people present had no desire to enjoy it. Circe looked up at her ex-boyfriend and persuaded rationally, "That's too dangerous. Let's discuss it and go together." "No." Icarus picked up the wooden wine glass in front of his seat and drank it all. He slammed the empty wine glass on the table. "I am a qualified soldier and know what to do before the war starts. Reconnaissance. It's reconnaissance. Until now, we don't even know the enemy's location, so what if we are together? Our most reliable investigator, Mockery, has been killed by those bastards. Now this job can only be left to me. Don't worry, Circe, I just want to find their gathering place. I will not rush into it. Take action and disturb the other party." Circe was still hesitating, but the water elf couldn't wait any longer. She looked around and said to Icarus seriously, "I believe you, Icarus, there is no doubt that among the 5 of us, you are the strongest, and with Ajak dead, I think you can become our new leader and lead all subsequent actions." Tina and Gilgamesh looked at each other and had no comment on the water elf's proposal. Both of them were very confident in their fighting power, but they had no interest in the so-called leadership. Just when the atmosphere was about to fall into silence again, Circe stared into Icarus's eyes and asked, "Just reconnaissance?" Icarus nodded heavily and said, "It's just investigation." Not long after, a sky-high pillar composed of a sonic boom rose from the Australian desert. Under the monitoring of a number of satellites and radars, it flew straight to the northernmost point of the planet, the North Pole. Being wary of the title God of Symbiotes, Yuri not only did not allow any mutated beasts that had not lost their bestiality to approach the excavation mission of the last living site in the Arctic Circle, but even allowed Shaq, who was starting to dig, to connect with yourself to take off the symbiotic reproductive suit and store it in the space that stores the dragon pattern. In order to dig out Grendel as much as possible without waking him up, the digging equipment Yuri equipped for everyone involved in the excavation was simply a super excavation equipment reinforced with a large amount of magic to increase its sharpness and penetrating power. Shovel. Fortunately, everyone's work efficiency was not low. In just 2 days, more than meters of frozen soil above the last living site were dug out. Suddenly, the spider sense suddenly kept warning like crazy. Yuri looked up in confusion and found that he was not the only one to sense this warning. The 5 Shaqs and others had successfully transformed into humans in recent days and integrated the spider sense. The mutant tribesmen who felt it stopped their movements one after another. The source of danger they perceived was in the same direction, indicating that this was an attack against the entire mutant tribe. Stop the excavation, Vanax, and hide all the tribesmen as quickly as possible. Except for a few exceptions, most of the mutants are still beasts with undeveloped intelligence. The only thing in their minds is killing and eating. They will show their cruelty wantonly when facing the weak, and they will attack the strong without fear of death. Yuri doesn't intend to let such tribesmen appear in anyone's sight. The world will regard him, the leader of the mutant race, as a villain who does all kinds of evil. The giant blue blackbird soared into the sky, and a wisp of red hair on its head moved with the wind. Yuri took the lead to fly out of the hole. After being at a certain distance from the life site, he took out the symbiote armor from the storage space, one by one. Return them to their owners. At the same time, Icarus, who had just arrived in the Arctic state, suddenly frowned. The Eternals were created with the purpose of wiping out mutants and raising intelligent creatures, human beings. In order to accomplish the first purpose more efficiently, the God group specially gave them this is how the Eternals can detect mutant beasts from a long distance. In the eyes of Icarus at this moment, the entire Arctic core circle was shrouded in the dirty and hateful aura of mutant beasts. Its conspicuousness was no less than a drop of black ink on a piece of white paper. Found it. Icarus slowly slowed down his flying speed and hesitated while hovering in mid-air. According to his original purpose, finding the hiding place of the mutants would be considered a successful completion of the reconnaissance mission, but he was not a simple scout. The warrior's soul was constantly urging him to go and have a fight. 2 completely opposite thoughts were confronting him in his mind, and for a moment he didn't know whether he should fight or retreat. Ajak, Gruud, Mockery, Ginger, and Fastos, except for Mockery and Ginger who have certain combat effectiveness, the other 3 in the 10-man group mainly serve as auxiliary logistics. The effect of this also shows that, the strength of mutant beasts is not very strong. Once this idea took shape, like a cigarette butt falling on catkins on the ground, a raging fire swept through Icarus's entire thought. War, war, war. I'll leave after just one small fight. For our comrades who died heroically. After finally completing his self-persuasion, Icarus's eyes instantly became firm. He didn't want to do this, but he had to do it for the 5 dead Eternals comrades. Coming. Yuri, who was under the prototype of the mutant race, narrowed his eyes slightly and clearly captured the source of the sense of crisis. The dark blue shirt, the super energetic way of running and the gradually brightening red eyes made the 5 Shaqs behind him couldn't help but feel. Pull up your spirits. It's Icarus. Vanax flapped her wings lightly, blowing up large swaths of snowflakes around her. In the battles hundreds of years ago, she was the mutant beast that most often faced off against Icarus, but in aerial battles, she was the one being chased and beaten. She had no long-range attacks, and she was huge. If she hadn't been so powerful, she would have died in the hands of that damn Ray. Yuri could feel Silly Bird's grievance and determination to avenge his shame. At this time, he had not noticed the appearance of other Eternal Tribe members, which meant that Icarus came here mainly to explore. It shows the current strength of the mutant race. This strongest Eternal can run and fight. If the opponent doesn't have the determination to fight, he really doesn't have much confidence in keeping the opponent forever. Sure enough, Akaris had no intention of descending at all. Yuri nodded to Vanax, who had been impatient for a long time, and said, "If you can beat me, then fight. If you can't beat me, I will fight." The stupid bird nodded heavily, flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Chapter 73. Hey! Two bright red laser beams, wrapped in blazing high temperatures, shot toward Vanax, who was in the air. In Akaris's disbelieving eyes, streaks suddenly appeared on the surface of the giant blue-black bird. Mysterious lines appeared, and then the speed of the giant bird suddenly increased by several orders of magnitude, and it easily dodged two blazing lasers. The golden lines were so familiar, and the rapid growth was so clear. Akaris stared blankly at the approaching Vanax, and murmured in disbelief, "Mockery's super speed. SHH. The warrior's instinct helped him avoid Vanax's first attack, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, he caught a glimpse of an ever-elongating sharp cone heading towards him out of the corner of his eye. Bah! The laser and the pointed cone formed by the symbiote reproductive suit met, making a sound similar to the quenching of a sword. Just when Akaris finally finished wearing down the sharp cone and was about to distance himself and continue to carry out long-range attacks, dozens of quietly extending symbiote tentacles suddenly locked his limbs tightly and fixed them. His head. Hey! Hey! Akaris exerted all his strength, desperately trying to break away from the tentacles that bound him. His eyes shot out thicker lasers, but Vanax, who was well prepared, specially vacated the position of his eyes. The giant bird transformed by Vanax hovered in the wind and snow, and the symbiote reproductive suit extending from both claws tightly wrapped Akaris into a large cocoon. Just when Yuri was doubting that she had obtained why didn't he kill him when he had such a huge advantage, but he saw that under the strong correction of the symbiote, Akaris's eyes that were constantly firing lasers suddenly turned towards his thighs. Ah! A liquid similar to motor oil swayed down the howling cold wind. Under the gaze of all the mutant beasts who were hiding in the ice cave but couldn't help but peek in secret, the most powerful eternal race man who was once a murderous god, he actually cut off one of his thighs with the laser that shot out of his own eyes. Laugh! As if he had finally vented the resentment he had accumulated for 100 years in his chest, Vanax finally stopped holding back after completing this move. The thick pointed cone formed by the symbiote reproductive suit pierced Akaris's dark blue armor, and at the same time forcefully pushed his head down so that he could see the ink-colored pointed cone that suddenly emerged from his chest. Ho! Ho! Akaris's eyes glowed red, and he seemed to want to try his best to cause the last bit of damage to the enemy behind him, but as if Vanax could understand his thoughts, the sharp cone that penetrated his entire body, it didn't stay for a long time, it just turned a few times and then retracted as suddenly as it came. Chirp! The clear chirping of birds spread far and wide along the cold wind, and Vanax proudly looked up to the sky and roared. Just today, she finally killed the damn Eternals at her feet with her own hands, fighting alone. She flapped her wings, swooped down, picked up the thigh that fell on the snow, and flew happily towards Yuri. Tonight, can I finally be the only one? Contrary to the inexplicably excited Vanax, Akaris's eyes gradually dimmed. He watched helplessly as blood continued to flow out of his chest, and watched as his broken leg was being picking it up. He watched helplessly as he was getting closer and closer to the mutant race who was suspected to be the leader, and watched helplessly. The tentacles that bound him untied themselves? Akaris was overjoyed. No way, no way, these mutants think that the Eternals have the same heart as humans, right? As long as my skin doesn't turn black like metal, then I can fight again. Hey! Thick rays suddenly shot out from Akaris's eyes. He knew very well that if he didn't want to die, this was his last chance. In this kind of burning life under stimulation, the laser has unprecedented high temperatures and unprecedented intensity. This wave of near-death counterattacks came so suddenly that even if they received advance warning from the spider sense, Yuri and Shaq only had time to summon the symbiote reproductive suit and turn it into a shield for defense. For Akaris, the actions of Yuri and others were exactly what he wanted to see the most. He turned around in the air and hugged the broken leg that was also thrown from mid-air by Vanax. The moment he extinguished the laser in his eyes, he ran away in the direction from which he came. Yuri put away the symbiote shield and glanced angrily at Silly Bird, who was obviously still in a dazed state. Just when the latter finally realized what had happened and turned around with annoyance on his face to give chase, Yuri killed him with one blow. She stopped and said, "Forget it, I'll do it." How could he not gain anything from watching the Encyclopedia of Magic for so many days? Out of his yearning for space magic and fantasy about teleportation gates, the first thing he found was the teleportation magic similar to the one used by Kamatage mages in welding iron gates. It wasn't until he carefully studied the principles of this type of magic that he realized why Kamatage's mages would have light spots like electric sparks when they drew circles. The essence of the portal is space cutting. The specific operation can be simply divided into 3 steps. The first step is to find the spatial coordinates of your own position, the second step is to find the spatial coordinates of the target position, and the third step is to use the energy in your body to these 2 locations cut space. Similar to the cutting of DNA fragments by restriction enzymes, cutting with the same energy will cause 2 spatial clefts at different positions to produce the same sticky end. Under the action of a similar law, the 2 spatial clefts will automatically merge into each other. Together, this achieves the purpose of space jumping. The reason why electric sparks appear is very simple, that is, when its own energy cuts space, the waste residue formed by the combination of space and energy. Once the energy evaporates, the space fragments will reintegrate into the invisible space and disappear. As Yuri, who directly stores the lower space energy of cosmic magic containing space gems in his body, he has an understanding and learning ability for this type of magic that is far beyond ordinary people. It is completely different from the detonating dragon pattern that once caused him so much trouble. With portal magic, he just with a few simple gestures, you can use it as you wish within your capabilities. And the scope of his abilities, starting from almost the entire earth. Zitsizi. I didn't wear the hanging ring that is necessary for Master Karmatage, and I didn't draw circles in the air like a fool. I just thought about it in my heart, and with a thought, a golden and blue portal with a diameter of about 3 meters appeared. It appeared above the ice not far in front of him in a horizontal position. Vanax looked over curiously and saw a broken-legged Eternal with a broken leg in his arms, crashing towards him with a look of horror on his face. That expression resembled that of an unlucky driver who didn't react until he was about to hit an obstacle in front of him and didn't have time to step on the brakes. Duan! Crack clap! Vanax retracted his head and looked at the single leg exposed out of the ice with disgust. Who taught you this flying technique of not looking at the road ahead but looking at the road behind? It can't be driving without a license. Chapter 74 The Dog-Licking God and the Dog-Licking God's Ex-Girlfriend. Icarus, buried deep in the ground with his head turned upside down, was filled with despair. Isn't it just sealed for hundreds of years? Why can the mutated beasts that were pressed and beaten in turn be beaten by themselves? Why have they learned such advanced things as space magic? The great supreme allythem of the celestial gods. What the hell did you idiots create? What a race! Hundreds of symbiote tentacles pierced the ice and imprisoned Icarus, who was really unable to resist any more. Yuri pulled the most powerful Eternal in front of him and admired his full head. Ice slag, covered in miserable injuries. Dozens of transmission tubes pierced Icarus's body from behind with claws and claws. Under the latter's shocked eyes, a series of superpowers including flying and laser eyes were sucked into his body. Incidentally, also read the other party's memory. You are the 6th. Yuri leaned over and whispered softly into the ear of Icarus, who was gradually losing consciousness. Circe will be with you soon, I promise you. A barbecue restaurant in the desert somewhere in Australia. Circe wandered around the table with an anxious look on her face, and from time to time she would go out of the house and look into the distance, hoping to see the man who had not returned yet from the end of the sky. At the same moment when Yuri said his last words, all the Eternals in the room looked up to the north with a sense of feeling, and the feeling in the dark told them, Icarus died in battle. Circe collapsed to the ground as if her spine had been ripped out. The knife and fork turning in the water elf's hand suddenly lost control and fell to the ground. Gilgamesh let out a long sigh and covered his eyes full of sadness with his thick hands. Tina frowned. After looking around at everyone, he raised his eyebrows and put down the half-drunk drink in his hand. They killed Icarus. The water elf turned a deaf ear to the clinking sound of knives and forks falling to the floor. He just stared blankly at the food on the table and muttered to himself, they killed Icarus. Not them. When Circe, who was paralyzed on the ground, heard this, she stood up suddenly and pushed the water elf and the chair to the ground. She pointed at the water elf on the ground as if she was crazy and yelled, it's you. It's you, this damn guy. If it weren't for you, Icarus wouldn't have left for the North Pole. If it weren't for you, he would still be here with us to discuss ways to fight the mutant beasts together. One is a licking dog who suddenly hears that her male god is dead, and the other is a scumbag who suddenly learns of the death of her ex-boyfriend who has lingering feelings for her. The emotions they had suppressed for a long time suddenly burst out. Gilgamesh was stunned and Ti was speechless. They started to tear each other directly in front of Na. Enough! Gilgamesh's right fist condensed into a shiny golden hollow glove, and after hitting the heavy solid wood table in front of him, he actually knocked it up. The huge sound instantly silenced the two crazy-looking Circe. They glared at each other fiercely, and the plastic sisterhood that had lasted for thousands of years was officially broken at this moment. Tina turned slightly sideways, elegantly dodging the food and wine that were thrown away by the reaction force. In her spare time, she gathered a spear and accurately lifted a plate away that was supposed to cover Gilgamesh's face. Sauce for barbecue. Thank you. Gilgamesh was flattered and nodded his thanks to Tina. After seeing her nod in acceptance, he summoned his divine power to shake out all other stains on his clothes. After such a drama, the awkward atmosphere caused by Circe and the two people was immediately broken. Everyone recovered their emotions and found a few relatively clean chairs and moved them outside the house to sit together again. Although the emotions can be recovered, the relationship between the broken sisters is difficult to reconcile. The water elf and Circe refused to sit together, so Tina had no choice but to sit between them and separate them. Stop getting emotional. Our task now is how to fight against those mutant races that have reappeared. After Gilgamesh finished speaking, he glanced at Tina. After receiving the latter's affirmative look, he cleared his throat and continued, although Icarus is dead, he has indeed completed the task of investigation. Now he can. What is certain is that there are mutant races in the Arctic, and they are very powerful, otherwise Icarus. Seeing that the atmosphere was about to intensify again, Gilgamesh stopped talking and spread his hands. Sorry, I want to say, do you want to go to the North Pole together? With the four of us, we should be able to give it a try, right? Must go. The water elf was filled with indignation. Icarus must have fallen into the trap set by those damn mutants and lost. Otherwise, how could the mutants keep our strongest warrior? I can create illusions, help disguise and confuse the enemy. Gilgamesh and Tina are responsible for combat and damage, and as for Circe, she may be able to turn Arctic ice into water. She glanced at Circe with disdain. Changing matter sounds very noble, but Circe's ability can only work on inanimate dead objects, which means that it is almost impossible for her to cause effective damage to mutant beasts. What a useless fellow! Do you think you are strong? Little brat! Circe felt that she had been greatly insulted. You can only create illusions within 1,000 meters of you. What else can these illusions do besides walk around like fools and set off fireworks like they did hundreds of years ago? Shut up! Tina put down her long overlapping legs and stood up. Holding the chair with one hand, she turned around and squinted her eyes to look at the end of the endless desert. What happened? Gilgamesh glared at Circe and the water elf, who were still angry, then came to Tina's side and followed her gaze into the distance. Is there anything there? Oh! She couldn't see the scene behind the horizon with her sight alone. Tina ignored Gilgamesh beside her and closed her eyes directly. As an elegant killing machine, she has an extremely keen sense of the energy directed at her. The sensitivity of this kind of induction is almost comparable to the point where the most sincere way can predict. There are some humans, strange humans, coming towards us. Circe suddenly raised her head after hearing this. As the being closest to humans among the Eternals, she understood that humans today are no longer the two-legged beasts they were shepherded in the past. There have been too many miracles in the history of human development. They are already the well-deserved masters of this planet. I have a suggestion. She opened her mouth to draw everyone's attention to herself. Perhaps we can join forces with humans to fight against mutants. Just as they were thinking about it, the strange human being Tina mentioned finally arrived at the foot of the hill where they were. Several armored vehicles stained yellow by dust parked one after another. After a while, the doors opened and a group of heavily armed agents filed in and out. A middle-aged man with slightly bald temples walked out of it. He nimbly climbed up a small hill that was not very high, while taking out his ID card from his breast pocket. I'm John Gattaro, Level Special Agent of the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistic Security Agency. The man turned the ID in front of Gilgamesh and the others and then put it back into his breast pocket. A smile that was full of smiles but not very pretty appeared on his face. He took out a few photos from his side pocket and handed them to everyone. Gilgamesh, who looked the most powerful, said, "Sir, have you ever seen or heard of this person in the photo not long ago?" Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows after taking the photo. The one on it was none other than Icarus, who had been made extremely clear after technical processing. Chapter 75 Black Dragon, The Eternals and Snake Shield. Arctic. After absorbing Icarus's ability, Yuri briefly familiarized himself with it and led a group of mutant tribesmen back to the last life point to continue digging. Although the Eternal Tribe scouts had been left behind, the other party knew that the tribe it's only a matter of time before people are in the North Pole. Before the remaining 4 Eternals came to him, he had to dig out Nar. First, he could prevent humans who noticed the abnormality of the North Pole from using him to cause unnecessary trouble, and second, he could prevent future troubles forever. Since then, the unscrupulous use has become the standard symbiote reproductive equipment of the mutant race. The god of symbiotes, this name is too big. Crack! Crack! In the icy cold wind, the sound of shoveling under the ice layer could be heard endlessly, and after an unknown amount of time, everyone finally saw a huge black shadow in the endless blue-white ice layer. The moment he saw the black dragon named Grendel, the dragon soul fire that was swaying quietly in Yuri's soul space suddenly surged as if gasoline had been poured on it, a kind of sadness that could not be vented. The anger spread from the dragon soul fire to the depths of Yuri's soul. Shaq and the others were about to ask him for his opinion, but turned around and saw a pair of eyes burning with golden flames. Stealing the body of a dragon and using it for one's own use is an unforgivable crime, and both body and soul will be destroyed. The dragon soul fire in the soul space gathered into a mini dragon head that showed no emotion. He looked blankly at Yuri, who was trying to get rid of the influence of inexplicable emotions, and said, "Inheritor, this is your responsibility. I don't need you to teach me how to do things." Yuri was so moved that he summoned the holy shield and the holy sword in his hands. He tried his best to resist the sadness and anger that did not belong to him, and struck the shield and the sword together again and again. Duan! The most powerful sword that cuts all things and the strongest shield that resists all things collided. Invisible ripples spread in all directions. All the raging dragon soul fire that touched these ripples seemed to have encountered a strong wind of level. The lighter flames were all extinguished in an instant. All the emotions that did not belong to Yuri were wiped out in an instant. When he regained his calm again, there was no dragon soul fire in the soul space of the sea of fire in the past. There was only a small golden flame not much bigger than the belly of a finger, floating in mid-air. Wow! Yuri looked at the simple holy sword and holy shield in his hands in surprise. The power of these two guys seems to be beyond imagination, doesn't it? Glancing at the flame of the dragon soul, which was no longer a monster, Yuri made a candlestick out of thin air and placed it on it. Then his mind changed and his consciousness returned to reality again. "Are you okay? Are you okay? Boss, are you all right?" Yuri looked at all the mutant tribesmen who had gathered around to inquire about their welfare. He shook his head and said that he had no problem. He glanced at the black dragon that stretched hundreds of meters under his feet, and used a trace of spiritual energy to carefully feel it. Brain. There were no thoughts or fluctuations. After confirming that it was correct, he nodded and told everyone to be more quiet in the subsequent mining operations. SHIELD headquarters, Tri-Wing building. Circe looked a little nervous, the water elf looked around curiously, Gilgamesh knocked on the passing wall from time to time, and Tina stared unblinkingly, exuding a domineering aura unscrupulously. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here." Garriott used his body to block the combination lock on the bomb-proof door. He lowered his head and tinkered for a long time before unlocking the multiple locks on the door. He opened the door and politely asked Gil, who was walking at the front. Gamish entered. He looked up at the director's office on the door frame and stepped in with a big step. "Welcome, my dear guests." Hearing his voice before seeing him, the 4 Eternals followed the sound and saw a handsome old man with grey hair but increased energy walking out from behind the screen. He shook hands with each Eternals enthusiastically. When they arrived at Tina, but he was elegantly rejected by the latter. "Ha ha ha, it's okay, it's okay." The old man stood still in front of the 4 people, straightened the front of his suit and introduced himself with a smile on his face. "My name is Alexander Pierce, and I am the Director of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. You can call me Pierce." "Hello, Pierce." As the only man among the 4 Eternals left, Gilgamesh shouldered the responsibility of negotiation without hesitation. "I am Gilgamesh, the one in green is Circe, the one in blue is the water elf, and the one in white is its Tina." After a brief exchange of greetings, a few people sat in the reception room of the office and got down to business. Pierce took the file bag from Gatoro and opened it in front of the 4 Eternals. He spread the contents on the table facing the 4 people and asked with an inexplicable expression, "On the farm late at night, the sonic boom pillar rising from the ground, the humanoid flying object photographed by satellite, the face of the eternal farmer that has not changed in 200 years, the London lecturer who faked his identity to obtain a teaching position. Everyone, I want to know who you are, what is your purpose of hiding in human society, why have you begun to reveal your true identity in recent times, and how many such people exist besides the four of you? Well. Gilgamesh read the information on the table one by one. He glanced at Cersei who looked embarrassed next to him, and finally had an intuitive understanding of what the other party said, humans are very powerful. But in his heart, he didn't feel much resentment towards this situation being investigated clearly. On the contrary, this fully demonstrated that the director in front of him had the ability to help them win the battle against the mutants. After deliberating for a while, he organized his words and said, "It's a long story." The story did go on for a long time, and it was not until half an hour later that Gilgamesh closed his mouth with unfinished content. Pierce and Garriott looked at each other behind him, and the latter nodded imperceptibly to the former. Tina casually glanced at Garriott's side pocket, with a disdainful smile on her face, recording, "What's the use?" So. Pierce condensed and summarized what Gilgamesh had just said and asked, "The current situation is that the ancient human killer mutants have resurrected and become more powerful. The immortal eternal warriors have been defeated one by one and only the four here are left." Individual. Gilgamesh drank all the boiled water on the table in one gulp. In fact, the remaining 3 empty glasses were all his work. The strong man burped after drinking, and nodded after listening to Pierce's words. Said, "You summed it up well, Pierce. Then what are you going to prove?" Pierce leaned on the sofa, crossed his hands on his chest and asked calmly, "At least let me see your abilities that are different from ordinary people." Gilgamesh nodded. He thought this was a very reasonable request. No one would believe that the people in myths and legends really appeared in reality, unless they could use the treasures hidden in the imperial mausoleums like Qin Shi Huang. The reward for those who entrust their intelligence to him. Gilgamesh stood up from the sofa, walked around the office twice, and then targeted the screen he saw when he entered. He rubbed the clenched fist of his right hand with his left hand, and golden lines appeared through his body. "Pierce, I will only show you once, so you have to watch carefully." Chapter 76 Mushrooms and Chrysalis. Looking at the shining hollow gold glove outside Gilgamesh's right arm, Pierce's eyes flickered, and his brain was running rapidly. He was not thinking about the effect of this ability that was obviously beyond the scope of science, but was calculating how to do it. How can you use this ability to your advantage? Gilgamesh held his fist and strode across the screen in front of the door, slowly raising his right arm under the expectant gazes of the 2 members of the Serpent and Shield Bureau. The speed of the punch was not very fast. When it hit the screen, it looked like a playful fist fight. But what was incomprehensible was that this ordinary punch caused really explosive damage to the screen. Boom! Crackling! It was like a thunder bombardment hitting the screen. Countless fragments shot out like bullets the moment the screen was hit by a fist. After impacting on the hard wall made of special materials, they bounced back and fell to the ground. Call! Gilgamesh raised his right fist to his mouth and blew gently. The golden hollow glove slowly disappeared as he lowered his arm. Facing Pierce's extremely satisfied gaze, he asked, "This proof, how are you feeling?" Clap! 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 Pierce stood up from the sofa and personally poured a glass of boiled water for Gilgamesh, who had returned in triumph. "Very good, there is no better proof than this." Seeing him take the water glass and sit down, the director of the Snake Shield Bureau continued to ask, "With the strength of the 4 of you, can those so-called mutants still cause any harm to you?" The smile on Gilgamesh's face suddenly froze. He put down the water glass raised to his mouth in embarrassment. He glanced at his comrades, who deliberately turned their heads and twitched the corner of his mouth. What the mutants said, "I am confident that I can defeat any of them alone, but this is a life and death war, and with just the 4 of us, the difficulties we need to face to win will be very great." Pierce was non-committal. He saw that the Eternals didn't want to discuss this topic too much, so he took the initiative to change the subject and said, "So, with all due respect, what do you want from me, and what are you going to use to fight with me? How about exchanging what you want? Weapons, fighters, information, supplies. I have everything you need." Gilgamesh turned to Cersei for help, hoping that this friend of mankind could give some reliable advice, but before Cersei could speak, a virtual light curtain appeared on the coffee table in front of Pierce. The above the pictures are colorful and vivid, showing the documentary of a little boy and his brother visiting their homes in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The water elf waved her hand, and the scene suddenly froze. She pointed at the two huge mushroom clouds and said expectantly, "We need this. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Ding!" Finally, the first sound that was different from a shovel colliding with the ice sounded at the bottom of the 800-meter deep ice pit. All the surrounding sounds disappeared in an instant, and everyone's eyes turned to Fan, who was holding the shovel at a loss. On knuckles. I really want to dig to the bottom." Yuri waved her over. After waiting for the stupid bird to sneak over quietly, he gave her a headbutt without hesitation. Looking at the aggrieved little eyes of the latter, he lowered his voice angrily and said, "I didn't you say you're not allowed to dig any further?" "I was wrong." Vanax carefully rubbed Yuri's big hand on his head, and then said with a happy face, okay, I didn't wake up this big guy." Yuri curled his lips and said nothing more. He carefully used his spiritual energy to sense Grendel's brain. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Just when he was about to take a breath and withdraw his spiritual energy, a weak but real fluctuation suddenly appeared in his perception. In the next instant, the faces of Shaq and the 5 who were only separated by a thin layer of ice from the black dragon suddenly changed drastically. The spider sensors on their bodies were warning like never before, and the source of danger was the sleeping dragon under their feet. There is a giant black dragon in the lair that is hundreds of thousands of years old. All-out attack. Grendel's body stretches for hundreds of meters. The digging site chosen by Yuri and the others is located in the middle of its dragon body. The reason why he asked everyone to dig quietly is because he wants to dig directly to the dragon's head. If possible, they can dig directly at the dragon's head. Kill the opponent in his sleep. But now the dragon's consciousness has begun to awaken, and under Yuri's perception, the body that has been buried in the ice for thousands of years has restored certain physiological functions in just a few seconds, so there is not much to do now. He should turn around and run away, but take advantage of his illness to kill him and try to inflict the maximum damage on Grendel while he is still unable to resist. Boxing, hand slams, energy cannons. The 5 Shaqs used all their methods and took a few breaths to finally break through the black dragon's defense and tear off its ridiculously hard scales, revealing the bright red flesh and blood hidden underneath. And Yuri was not idle either. He sent more than half of the energy in his body into the dragon as close as possible to the dragon's head, and then fired the bright and almost blinding detonating dragon mark into the energy. Together with the 5 Shaqs, they ran desperately to the top of the ice cave using skillful and heart-wrenching gestures. After actual operation verification, the yield of this detonation was at least 5 times that of the first seal that was blown up. I don't know if the black dragon parasitized by the god of symbiote can survive this attack, but if he doesn't run away, none of the 5 Yuri will survive. Boom! The moment the 6 people rushed out of the cave, a golden light as bright as the sun exploded from the position between the head and front paws of the black dragon underground. The muscles had just begun to beat, the blood had just begun to flow, and the blood had just begun to wake up. His consciousness was instantly stagnated in this extremely violent golden light. Starting from the center of the explosion, dozens of meters of flesh and blood were melted into nothingness. The aftermath spread out in all directions, and the ice within a radius of several thousand meters suddenly rose up and fell heavily without warning. Kakeka. As far as the eye can see, the icebergs are collapsing one by one, and as far as the ear can hear, the ice sheets are groaning under the weight. Vanax carried Yuri on his back, holding the 4 Shaqs' connected hand and foot in his hands. Circling around the ice cave that was buried first, everyone's eyes fixed on the excitement. He looked at the ice covered by the rising snowflakes, wanting to know the specific situation of the giant dragon below. 1 lap, 5 laps, 10 laps. Yuri twitched the corner of his mouth. This is how it feels, it's this feeling of being about to breathe a sigh of relief. Today I breathed in and out one after another. He would definitely not be fooled this time. Kakeka. As if to confirm his self-awareness, the ice that had gradually calmed down once again heard the harsh sound of ice breaking. Visible to the naked eye, an iceberg pulse hundreds of meters long broke through the snow fog, and then, a huge, crawling black shadow loomed under the ice mountains. Hold head high. The roar of the dragon filled with anger and frustration resounded throughout the world, and a huge pure black dragon head broke through the ice from the ice mountain range. Chrysalis, the god of symbiote, Chrysalis, Grendel, the one, Nar. Wake up completely. Chapter 77 Stupid Guy. Hold head high. Wrapped in countless broken ice and snowflakes, a black giant stretching hundreds of meters soared into the sky in a manner that violated the laws of science. It was only then that Yuri truly saw the statue that was absorbed by the god of symbiote. The true appearance of the black dragon you parasitized. It is more than 400 meters long, more than 3 or 4 meters wide, with 4 claws on its belly and 2 horns on its head. When it soars in the sky, it is accompanied by wind, cloud, thunder, and lightning. Its appearance and characteristics are very similar to the Chinese dragon in the memory of travelers. It's just that the black dragon named Grendel doesn't look normal. On his shiny black scales, strands of mucus are trembling at a very high frequency. The color of this mucus doesn't look like a pure one. The black is more like the dark deposited after the extreme redness. The black dragon kept summoning lightning to hit itself, not to torture itself, but to expel the black and red mucus that gradually covered the body surface. Apparently, the relationship between the symbiote god Nar and the black dragon Grendel is not good. Yuri's eyes flickered, but he made up his mind in a moment. He ordered the 5 shacks around him to return to the gathering place and lead the tribe to evacuate to the periphery of the Arctic Circle. He had already seen from what happened just now that Grendel's armor was stacked. It's frightening, with 5 players doing all they can but only destroying the opponent's broken record. Staying here can only add to the chaos. The 5 shacks looked at each other in disbelief, with unwillingness and helplessness written all over their faces. During the time they were fighting crime in Hell's Kitchen, the 5 of them fought to kill gods and Buddhas, and their confidence in their own strength was unprecedentedly high. Growth, not long ago, even killed 2 Eternals who were once like gods. But today, just now, the leader ordered them to attack with all their strength, but what is ridiculous is that the 5 of them tried their best and could only break the opponent's skin. Become stronger. I want to be stronger. What are you still doing? Leave. Yuri glanced behind him and knew what they were thinking. If you feel that your strength is low, then wait until I go back and learn the dragon pattern. Now. Get out. Yes. The 5 shacks looked up for the last time at the black dragon soaring in the sky. Their leader had already risen into the sky, clenching and relaxing his 10 fists, no longer hesitating, turned around and rushed towards the gathering place not far away. Hold head high. Grendel threw his head behind him, opened his bloody mouth and bit his body fiercely. With a sound of pain mixed with a happy moan, a large piece of flesh and blood was torn off with countless pulsating mucus. On the ground. Kill me. An uncontrollable and crazy roar sounded in Yuri's heart. He looked up and met Grendel's red dragon eyes. In an instant, the dragon soul fire on the candlestick in the soul space suddenly expanded, and the next moment, the candlestick turned into a burning torch. This golden dragon soul fire penetrated the reality and reflected outside. In Grendel's view, 2 swaying golden flames suddenly ignited in Yuri's pupils. Are you, the inheritor? That voice sounded from the bottom of Yuri's heart again, but the madness in it had faded away, replaced by deep joy and excitement. Use dragon soul fire. Use dragon soul fire on me quickly. The huge black dragon body surrounded Yuri at a speed completely inconsistent with its size. The latter struggled hard, but the position around him seemed to be fixed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free. Suddenly, the surrounding stance that imprisoned him receded like a tide in an instant. When Yuri escaped from the dragon, he saw that the dragon's pupils had been completely replaced by black. Nar, the god of symbiotes, successfully took control of the dragon body. Yuri retreated 300 meters. At this moment, he regretted provoking this behemoth, because after thinking about it, he found that the only way he could kill it in his original plan was to press the detonating dragon mark on the dragon's head. But now it's too late no matter what he says. He must hurry up and think of a countermeasure. Otherwise, being buried in the belly of a dragon may be his best ending. What if he is parasitically enslaved by the god of symbiote? Then life is really worse than death. The black dragon's body, which was controlled by Nar, surged up with red and black waves like a sea tide. In just a few breaths, the entire dragon's body more than doubled in size. The huge black dragon eyes looked around, and finally his eyes were fixed on Yuri suspended in mid-air. Give your body and you will receive eternal life. Submit to me and I will grant you immortality. This voice went straight into the soul, and the very bewitching words contained mysterious power. Just 2 sentences made Yuri fall into a trance. At this moment, the holy shield and holy sword placed in the soul space were not driven by anyone. The situation is suspended. A slight trembling sound resounded throughout the soul space, and Yuri's soul suddenly woke up as if a basin of ice water was poured on his head. Holy sword! Holy shield! Yuri's eyes lit up, and he stretched out his hand to summon two powerful artifacts to his hands. The holy sword that can cut all things, the holy shield that can resist all things, and the powerful shock wave generated when the shield and sword collide. Yuri knows that he has found the key to fighting Nar. Since I got you all, I haven't shown you the outside world yet. Yuri's consciousness returned to reality in an instant. Facing Nar's dark eyes, he put his slightly shining hands behind his back, pretending to be successfully bewitched, and slowly floated towards the dragon's head with its big mouth open. Go! The great god of symbionts, Lord Nar. Looking at the little guy who was constantly singing praises to him, Nar's dark eyes blinked, and his heart was full of pride. According to his perception, although this body was not as powerful as the black dragon Grendel, it contained potential. But it is incomparable to this dragon body. His soul was severely damaged in a battle, and he lost his sense of the dark dimension. In the process of escaping, he used his last strength to open the time and space tunnel, and his consciousness fell into a coma in it. What he wants to do most now is the only thing he needs is to find a body that can help him repair his soul and regain control of the darkness. And Yuri is like a piece of fat brought to his mouth. Closer, closer, Yuri looked at the ferocious head protruding from the dragon's head with confused eyes, and the mark on his palm was already burning to the point of faint pain. Closer, closer, at the moment when Nar was about to touch Yuri, the latter's eyes suddenly turned aside, as if substantial murderous intent burst out, and there was still the confusion just now. Under Nal's horrified gaze, this body with infinite potential suddenly formed a simple shield and sword in its hands. With a faint blue light flashing, he raised the sword high and appeared in his body like a ghost. The location of the tentacles connected to Grendel. SHH. The long sword, which looked old and without a front, was swung to the extreme, and with just one stroke, the tentacle was split in two. Stupid guy, you think cutting it off will hurt? The disdain and ridicule on Nar's face froze in an instant. He was horrified to find that after being cut off by the long sword, he directly lost his perception of the black dragon Grennar. Not only that, when he wanted to fight when the dragon body remained in the dragon body and communicated with the body, it could no longer sense the other party's existence. You humble insect! What did you do to me? Chapter 78 The Cunning Wolf Killer. Receive. The moment after cutting off the tentacles, Yuri used the receiving dragon mark on the ferocious symbiote head. The space opened by the receiving dragon mark has only pure spatial attributes. In other words, there is no time, etc. Other rules. No matter who it is, no matter what it is, it will be the same when it is taken in, and it will be the same when it is released. The symbiote covered on the dragon body began to tremble violently after losing Nar's control. Yuri did not dare to stay, because for him, the 1/10th inheritor, whether it was the black dragon Grendel or the common Nar, the god of living things, is an object that cannot be controlled. As a leader, what he hates most is that there are things in this world that are not under his control. The black dragon Grendel must die too. Without Nar, the symbiote was just a puddle of non-threatening slime. In just a few breaths, it was all forced out by Grendel. Yuri opened a portal in this pool of symbiotes that must have fallen through. On the way, a storage dragon pattern then collected it. Inheritor, kill me. During the endless years of Gunnar's struggle for control of his body, Grendel's soul has long been polluted by darkness. And he endures the noisy voices in his head almost every moment, and the unspeakable pain even drives him crazy. Inheritor, kill me, or I will kill you. Yuri looked at the red and violent dragon eyes and felt the pain hidden in them. He understood that death was not a big terror to this black dragon. On the contrary, it was the relief that he had once hoped for but could not obtain. Seeing the huge dragon head rushing towards him, the space around him was not imprisoned this time. Yuri silently raised the holy sword in his hand, and put the holy shield on his chest. No matter whether it is a mutant race or a dragon race, for all members of the race who stand out from the fighting, dying in battle is what they consider to be an honorable death. Roar! A huge fireball with a diameter of more than 100 meters shot out from the black dragon's mouth. The high temperature contained in it was terrifying. Yuri could already feel the stinging pain on his skin from dozens of meters away. Not daring to be too big, he used his space ability to teleport himself to a place outside the fireball's attack path. Then he spread his hands and a portal larger than the fireball took his place. Back to you. Behind Grendel without noticing, a huge portal appeared silently, and then a huge fireball erupted from it, accurately hitting his thick and long dragon tail. Ow! The entire huge dragon body was hit by the fireball and fell dozens of meters. The dragon's tail that suffered a direct attack was even more tragic. The extremely hard dragon scales separated from the dragon's body and fell to the ground like raindrops. Starting from the dragon's tail, it was spread dozens of meters away. The smell of barbecue. Grendel's red eyes were filled with pain and admiration. That's it. Beat me to death. As he spoke, he opened his mouth wide again, spit out 5 or 6 energy balls of various colors that were bigger than the one just now. The faint blue light around Yuri flickered, and he had to avoid all the attacks of the energy ball through flowers and butterflies, and finally directly selected the landing point on Grendel's head. His voice was intermittent due to the instantaneous space changes. Do you think that a big portal is easy to open? Let Hui Kao Lan. One detonation consumed most of the energy in Yuri's body. Coupled with the 150-meter diameter portal just now, he was already drained dry. Inserting the holy sword into the scales just above the dragon's head, Yuri put the holy shield behind him, grabbed the hilt of the sword with both hands and started cutting. He couldn't be a mage for the time being, but as long as he could kill the enemy, being a warrior was not bad. But what Grendel wanted was a hearty battle. He would show no mercy to the inheritor hiding above his head. The 2 horns on the dragon's head gradually lit up with milky white light for just 1 second. In less time, the white light shone to such an extent that it was impossible to look directly at it. Yuri's spider sense alerted him crazily the moment the horns lit up. He had no choice but to give up his plan to steal the house, and jump to Grenwell's dragon eye with a space jump. You keep saying that you want me to kill you, but your behavior all prove to me that you want to kill me before I kill you. In this case, then this battle is no longer about granting glory. The ceremony has begun. From now on, it will officially transform into a life and death killing. Laugh. Like a needle inserted into a fresh and juicy watermelon, Yuri relied on his own weight to pull the holy sword that was deeply embedded in the black dragon's right eye and slashed it down more than 10 meters. The huge eyelids closed instantly, but they still couldn't stop the sharpness of the holy sword that cut through all things. Yuri kicked Grendel hard on the upper lip of the dragon's mouth, stopping the downward trend. This sword almost cut across the entire dragon's face, but the most important thing was the dragon's eye that had been poked blind. Roar. Pain, rage, pleasure. Accompanied by this extremely complex dragon roar, which echoed throughout the world, was a white laser beam that swept randomly between the horns on the dragon's head in all directions. Wind, clouds, snow, ice, everything swept by this laser beam will be cut into 2 as if cut by an enlarged version of the holy sword. Perhaps the pain of being injured in the eyes is too severe, or perhaps it was Grendel who did it deliberately. At a very coincidental moment, the white laser beam quickly swept across the thick dragon body that was twisted in pain. Ow! Seeing the dragon body that occupied most of Grendel's total length spinning and bouncing down to the ground, Yuri twitched the corner of his mouth and silently admired him in his heart. What a wolf killer! Suffering such serious injuries, the ball of light emitting white laser beams between the horns slowly extinguished. Grendel opened his only remaining eye and found Yuri standing on the tip of his nose, making a sound of relief and gratitude. In the latter's ears sounded, "Inheritor, my dragon ball is in the head, please give me a pleasure." Yuri did not act rashly when he heard this. He opened a fist-sized portal in the air above the half of the dragon body that had fallen to the ground but was still full of vitality. He took out the black ball and threw it in to collect it. Under Grendel's expectant gaze, he jumped into the quietly opened portal and disappeared without a trace, leaving only a taunt floating in the air. Are you stupid or am I blind? The ball of light above your head is like this. It hasn't been destroyed after a long time. Roar. There was no other meaning in this dragon roar, except the embarrassment of being exposed on the spot by a treacherous plotter, and the anger of being mocked by Yuri in front of his face. The gradually dimming ball of light shone again in an instant. As if putting his whole life into it as firewood, this dazzling white ball of light expanded and expanded at a crazy speed, and finally expanded directly into a terrifying giant nearly a kilometer in diameter. Yuri hit 1,000 meters away and swallowed. He felt that his current distance was very dangerous. For the sake of safety, he decided to strategically retreat another 10,000 meters. The sphere of light with a diameter of 1,000 meters was like a sun on the verge of exploding. Under the control of Grendel, it crazily smashed towards its owner. The flesh and blood of the black dragon was melted instantly, and the ice layer within 3,000 meters evaporated instantly. The terrifying ball of light that had lost control was like a red-hot iron in a block of butter. It almost instantly reached the ice layer tens of thousands of meters below. A stream of dazzling white light emerged from the ball of light. In the next moment, boom! The entire Arctic ice is frozen in mid-air. Chapter 79 The Second Meeting with Ancient One. Invisible fluctuations swept across the entire North Pole in an instant. An orange-red portal slowly opened, and a bald man with a helpless face walked out of it. She stretched out an arm and grabbed it casually. Yuri, who was holding the holy sword and the holy shield, staggered to stabilize his figure in mid-air. He looked at the ancient shield that flickered slightly in his hand in surprise, and looked at the ancient shield. He kept asking bluntly, "Did I resist time or did you isolate me on purpose? I can't do it with this level of precision." Ancient One glanced at the shield in Yuri's hand and said without any emotion, "It seems that you haven't fully understood the functions of these two artifacts." Yuri looked at the shield and sword in his hand and nodded. He looked around. The snowflakes falling in the sky were frozen, the high ridges of ice were frozen, and even the dazzling white energy ball deep in the ice was frozen. The mighty power of time remains motionless. "Look what you've done, Yuri." Guyi's tone was filled with irony. "You unblocked a mutated beast that was supposed to be born more than 10 years later, and came into contact with a person from the future who shouldn't have appeared in the present. You forced the future to save the Earth. The Eternals took refuge in Hydra, awakening the god of darkness who should have been sleeping for eternity." Yuri shrugged, not caring about everything Ancient One said. "My true identity cannot be hidden from your eyes. I am just purely curious about what Rogers did. Killing the Eternals is my mission as the leader. As for you saying that they will save the Earth in the future, wouldn't it be possible if it were me? As for the Hydra and the god of darkness you mentioned, the former is nothing more than a group of rats hiding in the sewers, while the latter has been safely contained by me." Ancient Yi turned his head slightly and glanced at Yuri, who was talking eloquently. She raised her head slightly, and the eye of Agamotto on her chest slowly turned and opened. "I can't change your mind, Yuri, and I can't even intervene. What you have done, I just hope that after these things are over, you can go to Comitage as soon as possible, at least, learn to control and use the power you have together." Yuri watched Ancient One wave an extremely complicated flower hand in front of Agamotto. Two ribbon-shaped time energy condensed into a bracelet and wrapped around her arm. The runes on it were mysterious and mysterious. Yuri, just slightly after a little exploration, I felt that my mental energy was extremely drained. You don't have the ability to use it yet. While controlling time energy to cover the entire North Pole, Ancient One took time out to warn Yuri, "Our energy sources are different. Don't try to go until the total amount of energy in your body is not enough to compare with the ball of light at your feet. If you think of anything in motorcycle eyes, trust me, you will be drained in an instant." Wow! After hearing this, Yuri turned around between the eye of Agamotto and the energy ball under the ice that exploded the entire North Pole, and even had the urge to worship Comitage. He knew what Ancient One meant. Commitage's mages need energy to cast spells. But only a very small part of this energy comes from themselves. For example, for slightly better-looking large-scale magic, the energy required comes from the Trinity Wetian Emperor. Borrowed energy. If you borrow something, you must repay it. The price of repayment can be anything: flesh and blood, lifespan, health, soul. As a loyal believer of Emperor Wetian, the things repaid by the magicians of Comitage will not involve the fundamentals, so most of them are choose health as a bargaining chip for spellcasting energy. The more powerful the mage is, the weaker his body is. Although this price can be passed on to a group of devout ascetics, there will still be more or less residual. For example, the Ancient One was killed by Cassilis with a knife. Many people said that this was a specially arranged plot killing so that the Ancient One could use his own death to pass the position of Supreme Mage to Strange, but in fact, it was Cassilis who relied on his understanding of Guyi when he was a former disciple, and destroyed the balance in the body that Guyi had struggled to maintain with one knife. It was like removing the bottom square of a building block, and like the last straw that broke the camel's back. In fact, the ancient mage who was famous in front of people had long been gold and jade, but inside. After Cassilis's knife, Guyi's her body was completely destroyed, and this was the truth that she passed on to Strange in her soul body. While Yuri was thinking, time energy finally covered the entire North Pole. Guyi waved his arm gently, and the snowflakes in the sky flew upside down as if they were affected by anti-gravity. At the same time, the bulging ice on the surface fell rapidly and cracked. The opened ice quickly closed, and even the white ball of light that penetrated under the ice quickly rushed out. The green time energy was quickly retracted, leaving only the light ball that seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. Under Yuri's astonished gaze, it slowly shrank, then shrunk, and finally became the size of a basketball and was casually held by Ancient Yi. Thrown into mirror space. I have to go back. After Gu Yi finished all this, he breathed a sigh of relief. The lines between his eyebrows were vaguely visible, as if they were separated with a knife. Noticing Yuri's gaze, Gu Yi lowered his head unnaturally. An orange-red portal slowly opened behind her. Gu Yi turned around and walked in, leaving a word before disappearing. Go and see your people, don't let me wipe your ass again. In the end, the water elf still failed to get the boy he wanted, but with Pierce's compensation, the four Eternals received the firepower support of an entire aircraft carrier. After the satisfied four people performed a series of ability demonstrations in the laboratory with the scheming Lao Pai, they boarded the aircraft carrier where Circe personally transformed ordinary steel into pseudo-adamant alloy and arrived at Icarus. The sandy North Pole. This time I'm back to the North Pole. I will kill all the damn mutant beasts. The four of them gathered around a campfire on the deck and made this vow the night before they set foot on the Arctic ice. Relying on their extremely sensitive perception of mutants, the four of them, armed with locators and walkie-talkies, directly found more than 1,000 mutant beasts that were moving out of the country under the leadership of the five shacks. According to the original plan, Gilgamesh, the unparalleled melee tank, and Tina, the elegant goddess of war, had to try out what kind of powerful mutant beast they were before they could reduce the once full complement of 10 people to the current situation. After a friendly discussion, the two discovered that this group of creatures that even the creator was afraid of had evolved too fast. In terms of strength, speed, endurance, and wisdom, in just a few hundred years of being sealed, the most powerful several mutated beasts are still completely out of the category of beasts. After a hard fight, the two were sure that they really couldn't beat each other. The water elf and Circe, who had been hiding in the illusion to observe the battle, looked at each other. One pressed the call button on the walkie-talkie, and the other turned on the precision provided by the Snake Shield Bureau. Locator. Fire. Yuri put away the half of the dragon body that had been washed back by time, cleaned up all the snowflakes and ice stained with dragon blood, and then accurately opened a portal above the mutant race. As soon as he walked out of the portal, he saw countless missiles roaring down from the sky. Chapter 80. Without thinking too much, Yuri waved his hand and opened two huge portals in front of the rain curtain formed by the missiles. The missiles entered through the first portal and rushed out from the second portal. Several more unlucky missiles hit them. At the same time, the violent shock wave quickly caused all the surrounding missiles to explode. What is this? The water elf hiding in the distance stared at the huge fire in the sky. Those two blue gold circles could actually change the space. Circe had an ugly look on her face. The existence of this thing made the fire support she had worked so hard for turn into nothingness in an instant. After just a few hundred years, have the mutants become so powerful? Countless ammunition fragments clattered onto the ice sheet. Gilgamesh and Tina immediately retreated tens of meters after a collision, temporarily putting some distance between them and Tiger and Kate, who were watching eagerly. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yuri, who was slowly falling to the ground. His mutant true form was about the same size as a human, so he looked quite thin, but whether it was a group of mutant beasts that lowered their heads and growled in submission, they were still alone. The four weak Eternals will not underestimate the huge power contained in this body. The three shacks walked out of the group and looked at the leader with reverence and even fanaticism. Since Yuri can stand here, it means that the terrifying black dragon that broke through the ice behind him has been eliminated. What does this mean? What does this mean about the mutant race? The leader is more powerful than that terrifying black dragon. Chief, you are not injured. Yuri rolled his eyes at Vanax, who came over to greet him. If this guy hadn't accidentally woken up Grendel, there wouldn't have been a lot of things just now. He waved his hands angrily to show that he was fine, but his eyes swept around the empty ice field. The Eternals, with only 4 people left, will never die one by one. Since Gilgamesh and Tina are present, Circe and the Water Elves must be hiding not far away, hiding under the eyes of the enemy. There is no reason to let them go. Vanax, I'll give you a chance to atone for your sins. Yuri pointed at the seemingly empty ice field and said, find the remaining 2 Eternals and kill them. You can forget about Grendel's awakening. How about this? Do you want this opportunity? I want it. Vanax suddenly spread her wings, and her sharp eyes swept over the ice field over and over again, not missing any detail. After hovering above Yuri's head for a few times, she suddenly raised her altitude and flapped her wings in one direction. "Fly away, chief, just be careful, I will never let you down again this time." Yuri glanced at the four people in the stalemate, and with a thought in his mind, an order resounded in the hearts of all the mutant beasts: surround the four of them. A good duel between mutants and Eternals must involve humans. Can't you call for fire support? I will surround your people among mine. It depends on whether you two dare to call for this kind of indiscriminate ground-washing attack again. 36 strategies are designed to be used against rats. If you have the guts to break them. In fact, after seeing Vanax take off, Cersei and the water elf were already panicking. One was a special effects artist who could only create illusions to confuse the enemy, and the other was a makeup artist who could only use contact to exert his abilities. A bird-shaped mutant with a sharp beak and sharp claws, it has a bleak future. Tina and Gilgamesh stood back to back, letting the mutated beasts surround them with gloomy expressions. After all, they were people who had lived for several thousand more years. They knew exactly what Yuri was paying attention to. And the giant bird hovering in the sky. The other party is trying to wipe out the Eternals. What to do, Tina? Gilgamesh never took back the hollow golden gloves on his arms. He stared at the mutant beasts all around him. He knew that this time it would be more dangerous, but he felt the warmth coming from his back, which seemed to be with him. Is it a good thing that Na died together? Tina. Gilgamesh thought to himself that it was terrible. Could Tina's eternal demon syndrome attack at this time? He turned his head carefully and took a look, only to see chaotic golden lines flashing rhythmically on Tina's face. Not only that, even those beautiful eyes began to turn completely white. Who is Hole? Tina, wake up! Gilgamesh responded with a golden sword light that was as fast as light and had murderous intent. The ferocious eyes of the mutant beasts surrounding them suddenly froze, and they couldn't figure out why the two enemies started fighting on their own. Yuri saw Tina's pure white eyes and secretly felt sorry for the Eternals for 3 seconds. Tina's current condition has an accurate name among the Eternals, Eternal Demon Syndrome. No one knows why it occurs, and no one knows how to treat it. Over time, Eternal Demon Syndrome is in the mouth. Word of mouth became a terrible curse among the Eternals. Those who are cursed will attack all living things they come into contact with indiscriminately like a madman. No matter you have been a comrade or an enemy of the cursed person, you will be killed by the cursed person without mercy. Moreover, during the onset of the disease, after the spell ends, the cursed person will have no memory of what they did during the illness. Yuri has read the memories of the time traveler countless times, and Yuri has a deep understanding of the eternal demon disease. Its real cause lies in the brains of the Eternals. As we all know, the Eternals are actually tools created by the Celestials. They only look flesh and blood, but in fact, their internal structures are all exquisite and mysterious machines and magical runes. Every time they assist in the birth of a new celestial god, they will be brought back to their memory. Olympia, the real-life forge of the world. This is the place where the new Eternals are born, and where the old Eternals are rebuilt. Here all the Eternals who have completed their tasks will have all their previous memories erased and filled with life experiences about Olympia. After that, he is transported to a Tama-like spaceship and wakes up on the way to his destination. For most Eternals, every time is the first time, and every time is also the last time. They are just tools of the gods. It's just that the reset work of the celestial group is not perfect every time. Among the countless Eternals whose memories have been reset, there are always a few lucky guys who can retain part of the memory about the last mission. Just like with computers that have been overrun by memory, these lucky people will end up being the unlucky ones suffering from eternal demon syndrome. Tina is one of them. Just when Yuri was thinking a lot, Vanax, who was patrolling the sky, finally found the hiding place of Cersei and the water elf. They are all old friends who have fought against each other countless times. After discovering each other in the empty Arctic ice field, Vanax not only did not say anything, but secretly gathered a ball of energy bombs the size of basketballs in his mouth, preparing to give him a blow. A big surprise for an old friend who was hiding aside and was too shy to meet. As the two watched in horror, the energy bomb exploded accurately above their heads. After a surging shock wave, both the water elf and Cersei lost their lives. On another battlefield, the battle between Tina and Gilgamesh is about to end. End of this chapter. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.